Chapter 874. That was how it worked in the fringe. Whoever's fist was harder would have the final say. If it wasn't Han Shu, but someone else who dared to be so arrogant as to refuse to pay the entrance fee, Logue's guards would have mercilessly slaughtered that person. They wouldn't even give Han Shu a chance to enter the amphilas. But when he recognized Han Shu's identity, his attitude immediately changed. He knew that a person who could defeat Salas was not someone they could afford to offend. Even their master, Logue, would not want to offend Han Shu at this point in time. Therefore, they immediately put down their arrogance and respectfully made way for Han Shu. Han Shu knew that the rules in the pandemonium were determined by strength. He was not worried that Logue's subordinates would have any ill intentions against him. He walked into the amphilas as though there was no one else around. Haralai followed closely behind Han Shu. He seemed hesitant as though he had something to say but did not know how to start. When Haralai's subordinates looked at Han Shu again, their faces were filled with reverence. They were even more respectful to Han Shu than they were to Haralai. They secretly observed Haralai, hoping that their leader would be able to point them in the right direction. "Hurry up and say it! We have already missed our chance last time. We can't afford to miss it again this time." Haralai's subordinates were secretly anxious. They signaled Haralai with their eyes, urging him to speak as soon as possible. Haralai was in a dilemma. He did not know if this was the right time to speak. After hesitating for a moment, Haralai finally made up his mind. He suddenly raised his voice and said, "Mr. Brian." Han Shu was stunned. He looked at Haralai with a puzzled expression and asked with a smile, "What is it?" A year ago in the amphilas, you asked me to follow you. I told you that I would think about it." "Haha, do you still remember that?" Haralai put on a fawning smile and appeared cautious. Han Shu was stunned. As though he did not know what Haralai was talking about, he put on a warm smile and asked, "Is that true? It's at Lolong's checkpoint. Do you have any recollection of it after you killed Buzz?" Haralai said with a forced smile. Back at Lolong's checkpoint, the penta-elemental undead formation of the 5 elite zombies annihilated many forces. It was also at that time that Goran killed Buzz and joined Han Shu's side. After that, Han Shu asked Haralai if he was interested in following him. Haralai hesitated for a moment, and said that he would consider it. With Han Shu's memory, he naturally wouldn't forget what had happened a year ago. He was just purposely making things difficult for him. When Han Shu and the 5 elite zombies first arrived at the amphilas, Han Shu had boldly asked Haralai if he was interested in following him. Sovereign Tyre has 4 sovereign shops and the other 3 sovereigns have 2 sovereign shops each. Now, even the direct subordinates of Sovereign Tanai and Salas have to pay black crystal coins to enter the sovereign shops. Haha, the situation has changed. Han Shu was stunned. He thought that Tyre, Asura, and the others were really quick to act. They had already taken over all the sovereign shops owned by Salas. It seemed that if Han Shu wanted to get his hands on those sovereign shops, he would have to rob them. Han Shu hesitated. He wondered if he should seize the sovereign shops from the other sovereigns. After thinking for a moment, Han Shu gave up on the idea. Han Shu, who had just entered the Skybreak realm, was confident that he could defeat any one of the other sovereigns. However, if the other sovereigns were to gang up on him, Han Shu did not think that he could handle them all. This was especially true for Tyre, who was said to possess unfathomable strength. Before Han Shu had seen Tyre in person, he did not want to take the risk of making everyone his enemy. After thinking for a moment, Han Shu decided to take the long view and take them down one by one. Han Shu did not waste any more time talking to the sovereign shop that Asura had ceded to him. Ever since Asura handed the sovereign shop to Han Shu had turned it into a shop for his Celestial Pearl Pharmacy. The pharmacists from Ethereal City had provided the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy with enough medicines to sell. However, as Han Shu had been busy with the pandemonium, he did not have time to personally refine the medicines for sale. Therefore, the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy's business wasn't particularly flourishing. The reason why the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy was so popular in other cities was that Han Shuo's medicines were unimaginable. However, some of the medicines sold in the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy could be bought in other shops. There was nothing special about them. Naturally, those who came to the Amphilos would not sell their medicines. In Tanai, there were all kinds of poisons and pharmacists everywhere. After coming to the fringe, these crazed pharmacists, who were not accepted by the 12 divine dominions, focused their research on extremely vicious and exaggerated pharmaceutics. Each and every one of them was a genius in this field. The medicines they refined were far more bizarre and had a wider range of uses than the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy. Since the fringe did not forbid such research, it naturally did not forbid others from using their medicines. Without the medicines refined by Han Shuo, the medicines refined by ordinary pharmacists could not be compared to the medicines refined by the sovereign shops. If it wasn't for the fact that the sovereign shops did not have to pay exorbitant taxes, they might not even have survived. When Han Shuo arrived at the sovereign shop, he discovered that although the sovereign shop was large and had a dazzling array of medicines on sale, there were only a few customers. It was obvious that the goods here were not as attractive as those in other shops. Power, wealth, and status were indispensable. In the fringe, these were the basic requirements to ensure that a faction would be stronger than others. Since Han Shuo was planning to establish a foothold in the fringe, he had to take care of all the necessary resources. Han Shuo's arrival made the pharmacists extremely excited. They had heard that Han Shuo had defeated Salus, and they were full of admiration for the mighty sovereign shop. Han Shuo didn't say much to these pharmacists. He entered the material warehouse as soon as he arrived and picked out all sorts of rare herbs that could be used to refine pills. After notifying the pharmacists, he entered a secluded training field to refine all sorts of pills. Stalk after stalk of medicinal herbs were placed into the 9 tessellation cauldron. Strands of demonic yuan flowed through the veined patterns of the 9 tessellation cauldron. Balls of scorching flames gently lifted the 9 tessellation cauldron. The aroma of medicines gradually spread. Han Shuo, who was holding his breath and concentrating on refining medicines, skillfully used his newfound energy to grind the medicinal herbs and knead the energy contained within them together. He suddenly discovered that after attaining Skybreak Realm, not only did his strength and state of mind improve, even his efficiency in refining medicines had improved. Originally, it would have taken him a month or 2 to refine medicines. Now, he only needed a few days. Not only did the quality of the medicines not decrease, their medicinal efficacy was even better. In addition, Han Shuo, who had put all his attention on refining medicines, discovered that his demonic yuan was flowing smoothly and steadily. He could even feel the gradual increase in demonic yuan. This made Han Shuo realize that as long as he could truly calm his heart and cultivate, his demonic yuan would grow at a much faster rate than before. 10 days later, a total of more than 2,000 medicines were successfully refined. The medicines refined by Han Shuo were as smooth as pearls. They shone with a beautiful luster and emitted a rich fragrance that refreshed the mind. Master, there are many people outside who want to buy medicines. They have all smelled the fragrance of the medicines. Also, many pharmacists from the fringe have rushed over, requesting to see you. A pharmacist hurried in and reported to Han Shuo, who had just completed his task. Just in time! Han Shuo laughed heartily and walked out of the pill refining room. Chapter 875. After attaining the Skybreak Realm and demonic arts, not only did Han Shuo's pelletization speed increase, even the medicinal efficacy of the pelletized pellets was much better than before. Wisps of refreshing medicinal fragrance wafted out of the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy. Many gods in the vicinity smelled the fragrance, and came over to ask around. They had all heard that Han Shuo was refining medicine. These people were well informed. Many of them had learned about the miraculous medicines refined by Han Shuo from the other dominions. As soon as they heard that the one refining the medicines in the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy was Han Shuo, they swarmed over, wanting to be the first to buy the medicines in Han Shuo's hands. In the fringe, there were all kinds of poisoners who had delved into the field of evil and developed some horrifying poisons. However, almost all of these poisons were used to harm others. There were none that could improve one's cultivation. However, the medicines refined by Han Shuo were different. According to the information from the 12 dominions, most of the medicines refined by Han Shuo were for his own use. Not only could they speed up the recovery of injuries, they could also stabilize the user's state of mind during cultivation and help the user comprehend the mysteries of energy faster. To many, this kind of medicine was what they lacked the most. Therefore, when they heard that Han Shuo was refining medicines, they rushed over from all over the fringe with sufficient black crystal coins in hand in hopes of exchanging them for medicines from Han Shuo. These people were all fiends from all over the fringe. However, when they gathered in front of the Celestial Pro Pharmacy, they were all very friendly. Not a single one of them dared to barge into the Celestial Pro Pharmacy. They knew that in addition to being a genius pharmacist, Han Shuo was also a top-notch expert with terrifying strength and ruthless methods. In the territory of such an expert, they tried their best to restrain themselves and their subordinates, afraid that they would incur Han Shuo's displeasure. When Han Shuo walked out of the secret chamber, he noticed that there were many people gathered in the Celestial Pro Pharmacy's shop. When they saw Han Shuo, they cautiously walked towards him. Each and every one of them had a respectful and friendly attitude, indicating that they intended to purchase his medicines. Han Shuo himself did not expect that these people would come after smelling the aroma. However, it wasn't a bad thing for him. He immediately raised his voice and announced, "Those medicines will be sold according to the market price. However, only a portion will be taken out every day. In the future, whoever comes first will get to buy first." Han Shuo had been handling the Celestial Pro Pharmacy for a long time. From Phoebe and Emily, Han Shuo had learned some methods to raise the Celestial Pro Pharmacy reputation. Given Han Shuo's current reputation in the fringe, no one dared to say anything. After giving his instructions, Han Shuo distributed the medicines he personally refined to his subordinates, who were in charge of placing the medicines. He left the crowd. Many of the poison pharmacists who came to the fringe wore strange expressions. They wanted to say something but dared not. After watching Han Shuo leave, one of them groaned in a low voice, "What's so great about him? I don't believe that these medicines are that miraculous." "That's right. If he had the strength to defeat Salus, there's no way he could have reached a high level in the field of pharmaceutics. If it wasn't for his strength, I would definitely compete with him to see who's better at refining medicines," another person said indignantly. Every single one of these fringe dwellers was proud and arrogant. When they saw that so many people had rushed into their Celestial Pro Pharmacy right after Han Shuo had started refining medicines, they were naturally displeased that their business was greatly affected. However, with Han Shuo's strength, no matter how resentful these poisoners were, they dared not say anything in front of Han Shuo, much less cause trouble for the Celestial Pro Pharmacy. "Let's buy some of those medicines and see if they have the same effect." Even if he's strong, we can still tell the truth if the medicines are fake," one of the poison pharmacists suggested. The poison pharmacists who came to the fringe also agreed. These poison pharmacists who specialized in special fields were all very eccentric. If they weren't afraid that Han Shuo would kill them, they might have started to nitpick. Although Han Shuo had left, his senses still covered the entire Celestial Pro Pharmacy. He heard every word of the poison pharmacists. With a smile on his face, he summoned a shop assistant and said, "If those poison pharmacists want to buy the medicines, we can sell them even if they can't get in the queue." "Why? Those fellas are obviously here to cause trouble. My lord, you might not know this, but when you weren't in the Celestial Pro Pharmacy, they would often badmouth us, saying that the medicines we refine are nothing special," the shop assistant said angrily. He seemed to have a very bad impression of those poison pharmacists. Back when Han Shuo wasn't in the Celestial Pro Pharmacy, nor did he defeat Salus to prove his terrifying strength, these poison pharmacists were not afraid of Han Shuo. They secretly slandered the Celestial Pro Pharmacy, greatly affecting the Celestial Pro's business. Although Han Shuo didn't know much about them, he immediately guessed their intentions after hearing the shop assistant's words. He put on a faint smile and did not explain too much. He instructed. I understand. Just do as I say. Hee, although these fellas are eccentric, they are still quite capable in the field of pharmaceutics. I'd like to see if they can find any clues when they bring my medicines back. After hearing Han Shuo's words, the shop assistant did not waste any more time and retreated with a mind full of doubts. After the shop assistant left, Han Shuo chuckled and mumbled to himself. The headquarters of the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy will be in the fringe. Every single one of those pharmacists is a genius. I'd like to see which one of you can escape from my grasp. Han Shuo had been eyeing those poisoned pharmacists for a long time. He planned to recruit all of them. Even if those poisoned pharmacists didn't show up, Han Shuo would have taken the initiative to deal with them. Han Shuo was determined to make them work for the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy. Mr. Brian, long time no see. A chuckle sounded from outside. Moments later, Luolong, who was with Asura, walked in. The reason why Brian came to the secret chamber was because he was waiting for Luolong's visit. Han Shuo had sensed Luolong's arrival the moment he finished refining the pellets. Luolong was so loyal to Asura that he must have come to the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy on behalf of Asura. Han Shuo wanted to hear what Luolong had to say. Oh, it's you, Luolong. What brings you here? Han Shuo said to Luolong warmly after letting out a long laugh. Luolong put on a flattered face as though he did not expect that Han Shuo would treat him as casually as before. In his opinion, Han Shuo, who had defeated Salus, was now on an equal footing with the 5 sovereigns. Han Shuo's way of doing things should be different from before, and Han Shuo wouldn't treat him the way he used to. Therefore, Luolong intended to treat Han Shuo the same way he treated Asura. However, before Luolong could show his respect, he was surprised to find that Han Shuo was as friendly and easygoing as before. Luolong found it very strange. I have been instructed by Lord Asura to come and inform you. Luolong smiled and explained in a respectful tone. Salus has disappeared without a trace. The 10 sovereign shops under his control have all been divided up. You weren't in the Amphilos at that time, so you didn't get any benefits. Lord Asura believes that you are now strong enough to take control of the Amphilos. Recently, he has been negotiating with the other sovereigns, hoping that the other 3 sovereigns will cede some of their profits to you so that you can replace Salus in the Amphilos. However, it's not an easy matter and there hasn't been any progress. Han Shuo looked at Luolong smilingly and nodded. Luolong, please thank Lord Asura for me. Haha. I really don't know what else I can do for him to help me so much. I came here to tell you that Lord Asura is going to give you the 2 sovereign shops we acquired. Well, they belong to Salus anyway. Lord Asura believes that you are strong enough to replace Salus in the Amphilos. If you want to establish a foothold in the Amphilos, you have to have something in your hands, said Luolong smilingly. Han Shuo was stunned. He did not expect that Asura would be willing to pay so much just to build a good relationship with him. In Han Shuo's eyes, Salus's belongings should belong to him after he left. It was not Han Shuo's style not to take advantage of an opportunity. Han Shuo was overjoyed. He hastily said, Thank you so much, Asura. Haha, I really don't know how to thank him. What is this Asura trying to do? Is he going to continue using me as a tool? Han Shuo put on a smiling face, but he was cursing in his mind. There are hundreds of thousands of shops in the Amphilos. If you want to establish a foothold in the Amphilos, you will need the approval of the sovereigns and at least half of the shop owners. Only when these 2 conditions are met can you become the new owner of the Amphilos. Lord Asura sent me here to tell you this, reminded Luolong. Han Shuo nodded smilingly and said, Thank you. I know what to do. I don't think the shop owners will have any objections. As long as I can convince the other 3 sovereigns, there shouldn't be any problems. Those shop owners who were loyal to Tanai did not possess any formidable strength. It would be a miracle if they dared to resist a fiendish Han Shuo. But after hearing Luolong's words, Han Shuo realized that there must be something fishy going on. The other 3 sovereigns might have instructed the shop owners to oppose him. That way, The other three sovereigns could avoid offending Han Shu immediately and also prevent Han Shu from entering the Amphilas for the time being. The shop owners of the Amphilas were all in the Amphilas. If Han Shu decided to attack the shop owners, he would be making an enemy of the four sovereigns of the Amphilas. That way, Tyre, Log, and Wasis could at least find an excuse to deal with Han Shu. Han Shu had a rough idea of what the other sovereigns were thinking. He sneered in his mind and tried to think of a way to deal with them. Chapter 876. While Han Shu was making a name for himself in the fringe, the Han family in the City of Shadows, far away in the Darkness Dominion, ran into trouble. After Han Shu disappeared from the City of Shadows, the members of the Han family gradually retreated to Fort Lossberg. The Han family kept a low profile in Fort Lossberg and no longer meddled in the affairs of the City of Shadows. Wallace, the city lord of the City of Shadows, had tacitly allowed the Han family to leave the city. He did not inform the Han family of any major or minor affairs in the City of Shadows. It was clear that he had excluded the Han family from any power structure in the City of Shadows. As the fringe was too far away from the City of Shadows, it was very difficult for news from the fringe to reach the City of Shadows. The ferocious gods from the 12 dominions would travel to the fringe to bring the latest news from the 12 dominions when they had nowhere else to go. However, those fringe dwellers who entered the fringe rarely returned to the 12 dominions. As a result, there were more fringe dwellers than fringe dwellers. As a result, news of the fringe rarely spread to the 12 dominions as quickly as possible. The latest news that Phoebe, Emily, and the others from the Han family was that Han Shu had left Ethereal City. They had no idea what happened after that, much less what happened in the fringe. Not only the Han family, but even Wallace, the city lord of the City of Shadows, knew nothing about Han Shu's situation in the fringe. From their point of view, Han Shu had suddenly disappeared without a trace and no one knew when he would return to the City of Shadows. With Han Shu's many miraculous feats in the City of Shadows, for the sake of the House of Saints' position in the City of Shadows, Wallace started to weaken the Han family. However, as Wallace knew that the Han family was on good terms with Andre, Erebus, Aobashi, and the others, and was concerned about Han Shu's strength, he did not dare to go too far. Phoebe and Emily's decision to transfer the Han family's forces to Fort Lossberg was exactly what Wallace wanted. He turned a blind eye and ordered all the House of Han's forces in the City of Shadows to be transferred to Lossberg. He even allowed those from the 5th Corps who were personally trained by Han Shu to leave. Fort Lossberg was located at the border of the City of Shadows. From Wallace's point of view, moving the Han family there shouldn't cause him any trouble. As long as the Han family did not expand their influence in the City of Shadows, Wallace would not take any action against the Han family. He was happy to see the Han family keep a low profile. However, back when Han Shu was in the City of Shadows, he had offended far too many people. For example, Hoff's Hushvale City was located very close to Fort Lossberg. After several years of investigations, Hoffs had learned that it was Han Shu and Rose who had wreaked havoc in Hushvale City. Through his investigations, Hoffs discovered that Wallace seemed to have deliberately alienated the Han family. Hoffs, who had been searching for Han Shu for revenge, had shifted his attention to the Han family in Fort Lossberg after failing to find any trace of Han Shu. He planned to start with the Han family. Other than Hoffs, there was another person who was eyeing Fort Lossberg covetously. It was Larrickson of the House of Broadhurst from the City of Gorging Clouds in the Darkness Dominion. Larrickson had suffered greatly at the hands of Han Shu. Not only did Han Shu kill a few high gods of his family, but even his son was killed before he could marry Donna. Over the years, Larrickson had discovered that the culprit was Han Shu. With so much hatred, Larrickson had no intention of sparing Han Shu and the Han family. The House of Broadhurst was the most powerful force in the Darkness Dominion, the City of Gorging Clouds. Larrickson was a greater threat to Fort Lossberg than Hoffs. Larrickson and Hoffs had the same goal. They soon came to an agreement to deal with the Han family in Fort Lossberg. Hushvale City and Fort Lossberg were very close to each other. Larixon and the experts he brought from the city of Gorging Clouds were confident that they could destroy Fort Lossberg. In Hushvale City, Hafs and Larixon were sitting in the city lord's residence. Hafs put on a gloomy face and said, "Lord Larixon, with your help, we will be even more assured of success. However, Fort Lossberg is, after all, the territory of the City of Shadows. If we attack Fort Lossberg by force, won't Wallace attack us?" Hafs and Larixon had been plotting for a long time. The two were confident that they had the strength to annihilate the Han family in Fort Lossberg. The only threat they had now was not the Han family, but Wallace, the city lord of the City of Shadows. No matter what, Fort Lossberg belonged to the City of Shadows. If they were to invade Fort Lossberg and attack the House of Han, it would be a provocation to the City of Shadows. This could very well lead to a war between cities. The overgods of the Darkness Dominion would not be happy to see that happen. Larixon's eyes were filled with hatred. He said in a low voice, "You don't have to worry about that. Just attack Fort Lossberg. Wallace won't interfere. Given the status and power of my House of Broadhurst in the Darkness Dominion, Wallace won't make an enemy out of us just because of a puny Han family." Hafs was overjoyed to hear those words. He cried out in surprise, "You mean Wallace has already?" Larixon nodded affirmatively and said, "Don't worry, I have already communicated with Wallace. He will pretend that he doesn't know anything about it. At most, he will reprimand us. He won't fight us to the death over a puny Han family." The existence of the Han family has already affected the status of the House of Saint in the City of Shadows. I think the destruction of the Han family is exactly what Wallace would like to see. That's great. Hafs heaved a sigh of relief. He put on a sinister smile and said, "All right then, let's move. All right, gather your men. We will head to Fort Lossberg. The Han family in the fort won't be able to withstand our attack. This time, we will wipe them all out in one fell swoop," said Larixon viciously. "There's still Brian. When the Han family is destroyed, no matter where he is, he will rush back to us. When that time comes, we will be able to get rid of him." Hafs laughed heartily. It hadn't been easy for him to suppress those disloyal family clans in Hushvale City. Now he finally saw hope for revenge. The members of the Han family in Fort Lossberg had more or less learned about Hafs and Larixon's unusual behavior. For the past few years, the Han family had stopped expanding in the City of Shadows. The celestial pro-pharmacy in the City of Shadows did not increase. They also stopped participating in the affairs of the City of Shadows and kept a low profile. However, the Han family had been growing stronger in the dark. Although the Han family had stopped expanding in the City of Shadows, the celestial pro-pharmacy had formed an alliance with many large family clans in the Death and Destruction Dominions. The celestial pro-pharmacy's influence extended to the Death, Darkness, and Destruction Dominions. With enough black crystal coins to support them, the Han family was able to recruit even more experts. Before Han Shu left Fort Lossberg, not only had the 8 Desolation and Torment formation been fortified, but it had also been restored. Over the years, an endless stream of disciples of the Han family had entered the 8 Desolation and Torment formation to cultivate. The overall strength of the Han family had rapidly increased. Han Shu's influence in the 3 dominions was still considerable. Through his connections in the celestial pro-pharmacy in the 3 dominions, he learned of Larixon's trip to Hafs and the unusual behavior of Larixon and Hafs. He could roughly guess that Larixon and Hafs' target was Fort Lossberg. Although the Han family had rapidly grown in strength, Hafs and Larixon were just too powerful. Hafs was the ruler of Hushvale City and Larixon was the younger brother of the Broadhurst Patriarch. If the two were to join hands and attack Fort Lossberg, the Han family would be utterly annihilated. Phoebe, Emily, Ermike Cotton, Statholm, Sanguiner, Ballins, Gilbert, and other high-ranking members of the Han family gathered in the Han family's meeting hall in Fort Lossberg to discuss how to deal with Hafs and Larixon. It is said that when Larixon went to Hushvale City, he brought 3 high gods of the Broadhurst family with him. Larixon himself possesses late-stage high god strength. This fella is too terrifying. Hafs is the city lord of Hushvale City. If he comes, he will surely bring a large number of Hushvale City divine guards with him. With our current strength, we won't be able to deal with them, said Emily worriedly as she looked at the few. The Han family had no idea how to deal with these two formidable forces. It was impossible for the Han family to gain the strength to deal with an entire city in just a few years. They did not know how to deal with the formidable threats of Hafs and Larrickson. Sigh, it's a pity that Master isn't here. If Master were here, those two would be in serious trouble, sighed Gilbert. In his mind, Han Sho was an invincible existence. Although Larrickson and Hafs were powerful, they had suffered greatly in the hands of Han Sho. It was obvious that they were far inferior to Han Sho. If Master is really here in Fort Lossberg, I doubt that those two would have the guts to come here, shouted Sanguiner coldly. His eyes turned crimson red and wisps of blood mist visible to the naked eye started to seep out from his body. It appeared that his strength had once again increased by leaps and bounds. Brian isn't here. We can only rely on ourselves. Stratholm the old monster furrowed his brows and said, First of all, we must never leave Fort Lossberg. Inside the fort, we still have something to rely on and can wait for our enemy to exhaust himself. But once we leave the fort, we won't be able to deal with those two. Stratholm remained calm and continued. Also, send someone to inform Erebus, Aobashi, Carmelita, Andre, and the others about the situation here. These people are close to us. If they receive the news, they will not sit idly by. As long as they can get to Fort Lossberg, our chances of winning will greatly increase. All right, I'll send someone to inform them right away. Phoebe immediately nodded in agreement. She dispatched her men and Fort Lossberg became bustling with activity. Many figures quietly left Fort Lossberg to fight for the survival of the Han family. Chapter 877. A few days later, Phoebe, Stratholm, and the others gathered together. They were all wearing ugly expressions as they tried to suppress the anger in their hearts. The people who were sent out to deliver the news returned one after another, but none of them brought back good news. Carmelita was still in seclusion, and the news could not reach her. Andre had gone to Blackwater City 10 days ago and had yet to return. As for Erebus and Aobashi, they had been dispatched by City Lord Wallace on a secret mission somewhere. It was hard to say if they were still in the City of Shadows. Naturally, the Han family members who were sent to deliver the news did not even see the shadows of the two. Carmelita, Andre, Erebus, and Aobashi, the four people who were closest to the House of Han, had disappeared without a trace as if they had agreed to meet at such a sensitive time. This caused Phoebe and the others to feel gloomy, not knowing what they should do. It can't be that coincidental. There is no way that Carmelita, Andre, Erebus, and Aobashi would all vanish at such a crucial time. Of all times, it would happen right after Larrickson entered Hushvale City. Phoebe gnashed her teeth and said angrily, Back when Brian was in the City of Shadows, he was very close to those four. If not for Brian's help, Carmelita and Erebus would not have survived until now. Who would have thought that they would be so heartless? Perhaps this wasn't their intention. Stratholm the old monster explained with a gloomy face. There is one person who could have sent all four of them away and prevented them from receiving our message for the time being. Wallace. Ermike called out in a deep and meaningful tone. Stratholm the old monster nodded and said, He is the only person who could send Erebus, Aobashi, and Andre away at the same time. He could also force Carmelita into seclusion. This person is the most powerful person in the City of Shadows. He is the only person in the entire city who could do such a thing. Yes. Given Brian's relationship with those four, they definitely wouldn't sit idly by after receiving our message. Wallace definitely had something to do with the current situation. It looks like even though Wallace isn't going to do anything to us, he's planning on killing us with a borrowed knife. Ermike Cotton said hatefully. We should have left the City of Shadows long ago. That guy is obviously someone who would burn bridges after crossing the river. That's what happened to the House of Lavers. Gilbert shouted loudly. In my opinion, we should just fight with that despicable person first. I hate this kind of person who plays dirty behind the scenes the most. No! Statholm shook his head and said, Lerickson and Hofs are already too much for us to handle. Even if we know that Wallace is behind all this, we can't show it now. Let's wait for Brian's news. We can't even protect ourselves now, so we can't make another strong enemy. Then what should we do? Gilbert sighed, his face full of frustration. Let's hold on for now. Don't worry, I have already contacted a few major family clans in the Death and Destruction Dominions. Although Wallace wants us dead, our business partners don't want to see anything happen to us. They have already sent their men to Fort Lossberg. As long as we can hold on until reinforcements arrive, we will be able to leave the City of Shadows. Emily forced a smile and consoled. Over the years, the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy had cooperated with some family clans in the Death and Destruction Dominions. They had set up shops in the Death and Destruction Dominions. As the medicinal pellets refined by Han Sho were extremely miraculous, those family clans had earned a large amount of black crystal coins. To those family clans, as long as Han Sho was alive, they were more than happy to continue working with the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy. Therefore, when Emily informed them of their predicament, those family clans immediately announced that they would send their men to the City of Shadows and the Darkness Dominion to help them leave Fort Lossberg. That's great news! Statholm the old monster nodded gratifyingly and said, Then we should start preparing. Since Wallace wants to kill us with a borrowed knife, we really can't stay in the City of Shadows any longer. Right, let's move our assets and materials out of the City of Shadows as soon as possible and get ready to leave Fort Lossberg. Before our allies arrive, we will have to stay in Fort Lossberg and defend against them using the formations in the fort. Don't worry, His Lordship has spent a lot of time and effort setting up the fort. Even if those fellows come, they won't be able to break in. Balins the old assassin said in a cold voice. Then let's prepare to fight with all our might. Sanguinaire's eyes were bloodshot. It seemed that he was ready to start a massacre. For the next few days, Fort Lossberg was bustling with activity. Under the management of the Han family, energy towers and cannons were installed in every corner of the fort. The once barren fort had now become a famous dangerous place in the City of Shadows. All kinds of deadly boundaries and seals were installed everywhere. With the support of large amounts of black crystal coins and energy crystals, Fort Lossberg now had many terrifying weapons of mass destruction. It had the most elite divine guards in the City of Shadows, the Fifth Corps, Sanguinaire, Balins, and other ruthless and merciless experts whose strength had improved by leaps and bounds. The entire Fort Lossberg was bustling with activity after orders were issued. Silhouettes could be seen at all the gates of the fort. Energy crystal cannons that glowed with bright light were pushed to the gates and coldly aimed at the vast wilderness, waiting for the enemy to invade. Deep in a dense forest 1,000 miles away from Fort Lossberg, the chief of Second Corps, Ralph, was lying in ambush like a viper. Behind him were the Second Corps Divine Guards who were once defeated by the Fifth Corps. They wore ice-cold expressions as they silently listened to Ralph's orders. You should all know why we are here. We are not the ones who will be taking action. But once the battle begins, we will be responsible for taking care of those who have slipped through the net. The Han family's actions have seriously threatened the interests of the House of Saint Aobashi, Erebus, and the others have been bewitched by Brian and will not attack them. We are the only ones who can take care of this mission. Ralph's face was cold and sinister. He looked at his subordinates who were glinting with ferocious gazes and said, The Han family may seem to be keeping a low profile all these years, but they are in fact very close to some family clans in the Death and Destruction Dominions. They have established branches of Celestial Pearl Pharmacy in the Death and Destruction Dominions. They are getting stronger and stronger. If we don't eliminate them now, we won't have another chance in the future. Don't worry, my lord. The existence of the Fifth Corps has seriously threatened the survival of our Second Corps. Regardless of the reason, we will annihilate the Fifth Corps and the Han family from the City of Shadows, said one of the subordinates in a sinister face. After taking a short pause, he hesitated for a moment before he continued. But that Brian is nowhere to be found. He is so powerful. If one day he learns of what we have done, wouldn't it be inappropriate? Many people's faces jolted at the mention of Han Shuo. Although Han Shuo was not in the City of Shadows for the past few years, those in the City of Shadows could not forget what he had done. In their hearts, Han Shuo was an expert second only to City Lord Wallace. As long as Han Shuo was alive, he would always be a threat to them. Ralph's face turned cold and he said, "What are we afraid of? The City Lord is the most powerful existence in the City of Shadows. Even if he learns of what we have done, the City Lord will protect us. Don't worry, no matter what happens, the City Lord will take care of it for us." Although the subordinates were still apprehensive after hearing Ralph's words, they did not say anything else. They all knew Ralph's temperament, and knew that there was a grudge between Ralph and Han Shuo. They did not dare to make Ralph unhappy at this critical moment. The group of Second Corps Divine Guards led by Ralph were secretly hiding in a secluded corner of Fort Lossberg. As soon as they heard the cannons from Fort Lossberg, they would immediately disperse and annihilate any member of the Han family that walked out of Fort Lossberg. In another direction, Larrickson and Hofs were stealthily approaching Fort Lossberg with several groups of troops. Although the experts of Hof's family clan had suffered significant losses, he was, after all, the City Lord of Hushvale City. Many outsiders would be more than happy to submit to him. After a period of replenishment, Hofs had regained some of his strength. Larrickson's face was cold and gloomy. He could not stop thinking about revenge. The tragic scene of his son's death haunted his mind day and night, torturing him day and night, making him restless and restless. Brian, the Han family, the House of Lavers, and Donna, all of you deserve to die, thought Larrickson as he gnashed his teeth. When the news of Larrickson's son's death spread in the City of Gorging Clouds, Donna immediately guessed that the murderer must be Han Shuo, as Han Shuo had sought her out. Fearing that Larrickson would vent his anger on her after finding out the truth, Donna told her father about the incident that very night. Field immediately made up his mind to escape from the City of Gorging Clouds while Larrickson was frantically searching for the murderer. After Larrickson found out about the incident, he pursued Field with all his might. But as Field managed to escape in time, Larrickson did not manage to annihilate the House of Lavers. Since then, the House of Lavers had vanished from the death, darkness, and destruction dominions. No matter how hard Larrickson searched, he could not find anyone from the House of Lavers. The House of Lavers, Donna, Han Shuo, and the Han family had become a deep-seated hatred that Larrickson could never let go of. He could not find the House of Lavers or Han Shuo. Therefore, he decided to target the Han family of Fort Lossberg. He was going to start with the Han family. Half a month later, a group of Avengers led by Larrickson, Hofs, and Larrickson arrived at Fort Lossberg from Hushvale City. They did not waste any time and immediately launched a fierce attack. They intended to flatten Fort Lossberg with overwhelming force. Chapter 878. Larrickson and Hofs had the same goal. They led the experts of Hushvale City and the House of Broadhurst to Fort Lossberg. As soon as they arrived, the two gave the order to attack and ordered their subordinates to storm Fort Lossberg. In their minds, Han Shuo was the only expert in Fort Lossberg. When they discovered that Han Shuo was not in Fort Lossberg, they did not take the Han family in Fort Lossberg seriously. The two had the most elite divine guards of Hushvale City and high gods of the House of Broadhurst. Larrickson and Hofs also possessed late-stage high god strengths. Even the House of Kinson and the House of Kisa that had stood proudly in the City of Shadows for many years, let alone the House of Han in Fort Lossberg, would not be able to withstand such a ferocious attack. Outside of Fort Lossberg, Larrickson and Hofs wore cold and gloomy expressions as they looked at their subordinates, flying towards Fort Lossberg. They didn't care about anyone from the House of Han except Han Shuo at all. They felt that they had already given the House of Han enough face by coming here in person. Before a super expert appeared, the two of them would never lower their statuses and personally make a move. The human figures flew towards Fort Lossberg. Each and every one of them was howling wildly and ferociously. The divine weapons in their hands were overflowing with astonishing divine energy. They appeared to be brimming with confidence and thought nothing of Fort Lossberg. All of a sudden, thunderous explosions sounded from within Fort Lossberg. Shortly after, dazzling beams of light carrying astonishing amounts of energy bombarded the outside of Fort Lossberg. The beams of light were as thick as a man's waist. More than a dozen of them shot out at the same time. Hoff's divine guards from Hushvale City were caught off guard, and many of them were struck by the energy beams. The divine bodies of many mid-gods were instantly penetrated. Those who were struck by the energy beams fell to the ground with grievous injuries. Ever since the Han family took over Fort Lossberg, they had spared no expense in spending crystal coins on the defense of the fort. Countless energy crystals were transported from various mines to Fort Lossberg and used to fill the energy crystal cannons. These energy crystal cannons were extremely powerful and destructive. With enough energy crystals, they could unleash as much power as a high god. The dozen or so energy crystal cannons were usually placed on the outer walls of Fort Lossberg to deter outsiders. But now that the enemy had arrived, Phoebe and the others had placed a dozen or so energy crystal cannons in the energy towers so that they could launch a surprise attack at the enemy. One had to admit that the casualties suffered by Hoff's divine guards were their own doing. If they weren't so conceited and arrogant, if they had been a little more cautious, they would not have suffered such a heavy blow from the energy crystal cannons. With the energy crystals in the energy towers, the dozen or so energy crystal cannons fired dazzling beams of light at Hoff's divine guards. In the blink of an eye, dozens of Hushvale City divine guards were blasted by the energy crystal cannons and died on the spot. Beneath the energy towers, the members of the Han family continued to fill the energy crystal cannons with energy crystals. Dazzling beams of light soared into the sky. Loud rumbles were heard as the energy cannons rained down on the Hushvale City divine guards. One after another, human figures fell from the sky. Severed limbs and blood rained down from the sky. The entrance to Fort Lossberg was dyed crimson. "Be careful! Spread out!" Hoffs did not expect that a puny little Fort Lossberg would possess so many energy crystal cannons and so many energy crystals. He was so angry that he yelled at the top of his lungs. The energy crystal cannons were very expensive. Every time they fired, they would consume an enormous amount of energy crystal cannons. Many people believed that the energy crystal cannons were worth tens of thousands of black crystal coins. That was why, even though some small family clans had energy crystal cannons, they would not expend so much energy crystal cannons. But what they did not know was that the Han family of Celestial Pearl Pharmacy was able to rake in an astonishing amount of profits every year due to its branches in the death, destruction, and darkness dominions. The Han family was now filthy rich, and they could afford to consume such an enormous amount of energy crystal cannons. Due to Hoff's miscalculation, nearly 100 Hushvale City divine guards were killed in just a few moments. That was equivalent to an entire company of divine guards. The energy crystal cannons did not stop firing. They fired at the human figures flying above Fort Lossberg and at the enemies stationed at the Fort Lossberg in the distance. Beams after beams of burning energy crystal cannons bombarded the Hushvale City divine guards. Hoff's shout was drowned out by the deafening explosions of the energy crystal cannons. His divine guards continued to charge towards Fort Lossberg without a care for their own safety. But this time, they had learned their lesson. They spread out and kept a large distance between each other. With that, the dozen or so energy crystal cannons could no longer be as arrogant as before. Under the continuous bombardment, only 20 or so Hushvale City divine guards fell from the sky. The Hushvale City divine guards finally flew into the sky above Fort Lossberg and landed on the ground. The first divine guard to land suddenly jolted. He discovered that he was stopped by an invisible barrier. He could not enter Fort Lossberg at all. But just as he was about to get up, he discovered that the invisible barrier suddenly exerted a strong pulling force on him. He could not control his body and began to sway in the sky above Fort Lossberg. It was at this moment that an energy crystal cannon shot into the sky and bombarded the Divine Guard, turning him into mincemeat. After him, 15 people successively fell from the bombardment of the energy crystal cannons, but without exception they were all blocked by the barrier formed by the energy towers. Similarly, more and more energy crystal cannons shot into the sky. Those unfortunate Divine Guards who fell into the barrier were struck by the crystal cannons and died on the spot. Both the energy crystal cannons and the energy barrier were powered by the energy provided by the energy crystals in the energy towers. Therefore, the energy from the energy crystal cannons could not be hindered by the energy barrier at all. That was also the reason why the Hushvale City Divine Guards were so confident in charging into Fort Lossberg. As a result, they tasted the bitter fruit. Every single Divine Guard that dared to charge into Fort Lossberg was killed. The energy crystal cannons and the energy barrier worked in tandem to kill every Divine Guard that dared to charge into the barrier. In just the blink of an eye, dozens of Divine Guards were killed. They died horrible deaths. "All of you, get back here!" shouted Hofs furiously as he hovered in midair. It was too late for Hofs to shout. Most of the intruders had been killed. Many of them realized that things were not going well for them and decided to stay where they were. Before they even entered Fort Lossberg, Hofs had lost more than 150 of his subordinates. Hofs had used up a lot of his forces during the last chaos in Hushvale City. Recently, he had managed to deter a few other family clans with ill intentions. The death of his Divine Guards caused him great heartache. He was worried that if this continued, those family clans would start plotting against him again after learning that he had lost even more of his forces. "City Lord, with both the energy crystal cannons and the energy barrier protecting Fort Lossberg, this is going to be difficult. We have been too impulsive. It seems that the Han family is truly wealthy. They are willing to burn their money to resist us," said the chief of the First Corps to Hofs in a grave face. "Let's destroy the energy barrier first. Once the barrier is destroyed, we will be able to charge into Fort Lossberg." Hofs was enraged, but he did not lose his mind. He put on a dark face and shouted, "Once we enter Fort Lossberg and encounter them head-on, they will not be able to stop us with their strength. Let's work together to destroy the energy barrier. The Han family must be very wealthy. We have made the right decision this time," said Larrickson in a mischievous smile. He was thinking about the black crystal coins of the Han family. The Divine Guards that Larrickson brought with him were the elites of the House of Broadhurst. They did not participate in the assault on Fort Lossberg. Although Hofs had lost 100 or so Divine Guards, Larrickson and his subordinates were unharmed. Therefore, while Hofs was cursing and swearing, Larrickson could leisurely think about how to divide the black crystal coins of the Han family. Upon hearing Larrickson's words, Hofs' eyes lit up. He looked at Fort Lossberg greedily and said, "That's right. For the Han family to be able to provide so many energy crystals, they must be very wealthy. I have long investigated and found out that many family clans in the abyss of death and destruction have business dealings with them. God knows how many crystal coins they have earned from the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy over the years. If we can get those crystal coins, we will be able to make up for the losses of my subordinates." Larrickson shot a glance at Hofs but did not say anything. He seemed to be plotting something. "Let's attack Fort Lossberg together. Every time the energy barrier on the fort withstands a wave of our attacks, it will cost tens of thousands of black crystal coins. Let's see how many waves the energy crystals in the energy towers can withstand," shouted Hofs as he waved his hand. Following Hofs' command, the Divine Guards of Hushvale City started bombarding Fort Lossberg with their divine energy and divine weapons from a distance. Beams of colorful divine energy landed on Fort Lossberg like meteors. All sorts of bizarre divine weapons with astonishing penetrative power whizzed out and bombarded the fort. "Hold them off! Damn it, we have a lot of crystal coins! When those bastards get in, they will surely rob the energy crystals in the energy towers. Fill them up! Don't leave any for them. At the very least, it will consume their divine energy. When they arrive at the Han family, we will show them what we're made of," shouted Dark Dragon Gilbert from Fort Lossberg. He instructed the divine guards of the Han family to place the sparkling energy crystals into the energy towers. Chapter 879. Gilbert shouted from inside Fort Lossberg. He himself had joined in the burning of money. He was stuffing energy crystal after energy crystal into the energy towers while mumbling to himself. God damn it, one energy crystal is worth 3,000 black crystal coins. How extravagant! The energy crystals used in the Han family's energy tower were of the highest purity, and contained the highest amount of energy. These energy crystals could provide a huge amount of energy, allowing the energy tower to support the energy crystals and the energy barrier, which cooperated with the attack of enemies. Although more than 100 of the invading enemies were killed, the energy crystals used in Fort Lossberg were worth at least 1,000,000 black crystal coins. To some small family clans, 1,000,000 black crystal coins was an enormous sum. Their tax revenue and profits for several years might not even be worth 1,000,000 black crystal coins. Gilbert cursed and shouted at the Han family guards to continue filling the energy crystals with all their might. The energy towers were glowing with dazzling radiance. Not only did they support the energy boundaries, but they also shot beams of light at the outside of Fort Lossberg, aimed at Hafs and his men who were attacking the fort. Before entering the Han family, these guards of the Han family had gone through many rounds of interrogation. Every single one of them had a clean background and extraordinary talent. Of course, most of them possessed mid-god strength before they entered the Han family. Once they entered the Han family, with the enormous financial support of the Han family, they would first be provided with the most suitable divine weapons and divine armors. Then, they would be sent to the 8 Desolation and Torment formation to temper themselves. After exiting the formation, they would be personally trained by Balans and the others. After going through many rounds of tempering, every single one of these guards possessed strength that could not be underestimated. They had tenacious minds and were calm in their actions. They would never drop the ball at a critical moment. With them in charge of filling and operating the energy crystals, they were much more efficient than the other divine guards in the City of Shadows. Not only did those energy crystal cannons possess incredible firepower, but they also had a long range. Under the bombardment of the energy crystal cannons, Haf's subordinates were thrown into confusion. Many of them were struck by the energy crystal cannons and killed outside Fort Lossberg. Every bombardment from Fort Lossberg was burning money. Using the wealth and energy crystals they had, the 30 or so soldiers on Fort Lossberg's side were able to keep the invaders led by Hafs and his men at bay. Spread out! Damn it! Don't you know that those energy crystal cannons have a long range? Hafs couldn't help but yell and curse when he saw that more and more of his subordinates were dying. He ordered them to distance themselves from each other. Lerickson and the high gods of the House of Broadhurst had no choice but to expend their divine energy to form a boundary to protect the area they were in. Lerickson and the high gods were all respected characters in the City of Gorging Clouds. Naturally, they would not hide like Hafs and his followers. For the sake of their reputation, they had no choice but to consume the divine energy in their bodies to resist the energy blasts that were falling from the sky. The battle was in a stalemate. One side was powerful while the other side had sufficient financial resources. Just like that, the battle continued. It was obvious that Fort Lossberg was on the losing side. The number of energy crystals they could carry was limited. They had used up too many of their energy crystals to withstand the high-intensity attacks. Gradually, they discovered that they were running out of energy crystals. "Lord Gilbert, we're running out of energy crystals. What should we do?" asked a man who was as hot-tempered as the Dark Dragon. "Of course we're retreating. What do you think we should do? Are we going to rush out and die?" shouted Gilbert. "Brothers, it's about time. Let's get out of this godforsaken place while there's still some energy left in the energy towers. Come on, let's return to the Han family first. We have plenty of time." "We'll take our time," shouted the army. They filled the remaining energy crystals into the energy towers and swiftly retreated to the Han family at the center of Fort Lossberg. Not a single one of them hesitated. It was as though they had been trained in this field before. All the energy crystals in the area had been stuffed into the energy towers. There was nothing of value left in the vicinity. In the blink of an eye, not even a shadow of the army could be seen. Although they had already left, the energy towers were still firing beams of light at the enemies outside Fort Lossberg due to the support of the energy crystals. In just a short while, a few dozen of Hoff's subordinates had been struck by the energy crystal cannons. Even Lerickson and the experts of the Han family had exhausted a significant amount of their divine energy to maintain the energy barriers. Gradually, the energy crystal cannons inside Fort Lossberg calmed down. They listened carefully and discovered that the fort was completely silent. There were no signs of the attacks. "Let's go in. There's no one left," said Lerickson calmly to Hoffs after carefully sensing for a moment. Hoffs had also noticed the anomaly inside Fort Lossberg even without Lerickson's warning. But this time, Hoffs was much more cautious. He pointed at one of his subordinates and instructed, "Go in and see what's going on." The subordinate felt bitter, but he dared not show it. He nodded and went into the fort. Hoffs cautiously descended into the air above Fort Lossberg. When he finally broke through the energy barrier, he shouted, "The energy barrier has been completely depleted. The energy towers are no longer glowing. My lord, there's no one left. Let's go in," commanded Hoffs. He knew that there would be no more danger for the time being. Hoffs and Lerickson flew out and landed at the center of Fort Lossberg. As soon as Hoffs and Lerickson entered the fort, they immediately looked around with glistening eyes as though they were looking for something valuable. Hoffs rolled his eyes and cursed. "Damn it, there's nothing left! That damned Han family, they really don't leave us any loot!" Lerickson wore a dark face. It was obvious that he was dissatisfied with the barrier. He let out a cold groan and said, "Now that we have entered the fort, it will be much easier. The Han family is right at the center of the fort. Let's see what they can do. Hoffs, don't worry. I'm certain that the Han family has what you want. I can't wait any longer." Hoffs put on a cold face and commanded, "Let's go to the center of the fort and annihilate the Han family." At the center of Fort Lossberg, the Han family. Unbeknownst to him, layers of thick, dark clouds had strangely stopped in the sky above the Han family. These dark clouds were very strange, as they only covered the area around the Han family. Other than that, the rest of Fort Lossberg was clear, and the sun shone down warmly. Inside the Han family, chilly winds blew. Clouds of hazy mist came out of nowhere and filled every corner of the Han family. The Han family was shrouded in mist, and no one could see what was inside the Han family. "Balans, Sanguiner, have all the demonic formations been activated?" asked Phoebe in a solemn face. She was in a spacious meeting room at the top of the tallest building in the Han family. "No problem. I have checked them one last time. They have all been activated." Sanguiner nodded. His crimson eyes gazed into the distance. He took a deep breath and said, "Gilbert has returned. He should have completed his mission. It seems that it won't be long before Hoffs and his men arrive. Mr. Statholm, are there any other unrelated people in the fort?" Emily asked Statholm with a faint smile. Statholm nodded and smilingly replied, "They have left long ago. Other than our Han family, there are no other people from the City of Shadows in the fort. Those people have nothing to do with our Han family. I believe that even if Wallace wants to get rid of us, he won't be able to do anything to them. We can spread the news through their mouths. I think Wallace is just waiting to be scolded." Ermike interjected. Ermike Cotton interjected. He felt that such a petty city lord would never be able to bring the City of Shadows to greater heights. "I finally understand why the City of Shadows is ranked just above Hushvale City in the Darkness Dominion. Hoffs isn't forbearing enough and Wallace isn't tolerant enough. Although the two possess extraordinary strength, they can't achieve greatness because of these two traits. Who cares? As long as we can get through this, we will leave the City of Shadows and look for Brian." Given Brian's strength, he will surely bring a bright future to our Han family. Statholm put on a relaxed smile and consoled the crowd. Although I haven't spent much time with Brian, I know that he has limitless potential. In the future, our Han family will surely surpass Wallace's House of Saint. When that time comes, we can come back for revenge. It seemed that Statholm had underestimated Han Shuo's capabilities. The current Han Shuo did not even need to fight personally. Just the power that little skull Han Hao possessed was enough to completely suppress the Saint family of the City of Shadows. I'm back. Damn it, I've used up so many energy crystals. My heart aches. It was at this moment that Dark Dragon Gilbert's voice sounded. Moments later, Gilbert walked into the room with a pained face. It's alright. As long as we can get results, we don't mind losing some energy crystals. Emily put on a faint smile and asked, How did it go, Dark Dragon? We killed 200 of their divine guards. Gilbert laughed sinisterly and said, There were many who suffered light or serious injuries. Even Lerickson and the others must have used up some of their divine energy. Wonderful! Haha, Dark Dragon, you are really something! Shouted Sanguiner. His eyes were bloodshot as he said, Just you wait, I will not lose to you. I will make them wail like ghosts and howl like wolves. Chapter 880 ****** Fort Lossberg, in front of the Han family's residence. Lerickson, Hafs, and their subordinates had finally arrived at this place. The Hushvale City Divine Guards, who had been fuming with anger all along the way, stopped in front of the Han family's residence. Their faces were filled with worry and vigilance. From the outside, the Han family's residence was shrouded in strange dark clouds. Thick smoke lingered in the air, and it was impossible to tell what dangers lurked within. The Hushvale City Divine Guards, who had suffered heavy casualties from the energy crystal cannons, had grown fearful of the Han family. They no longer dared to venture into the city. After Lerickson and Hafs arrived at the House of Han, they immediately gestured for their subordinates to stop after they saw the unusual situation in the House of Han. The two wore gloomy faces and were secretly probing the situation inside the House of Han with their divine souls. After a long while, the two were astonished. Hafs softly cried out, Something's wrong. My divine soul seems to be blocked by layers upon layers of thick fog. I can't sense any signs of life. That's impossible. Those fellows must be in there. They must have used some special method to cut off our soul probing. Lerickson nodded in agreement. That's right. I can't sense any signs of life either. But I am certain that none of the Han family has left Fort Lossberg. According to my sources, they have been defending Fort Lossberg all this time. Those who have left Fort Lossberg are just some unrelated people. Hafs knew that Lerickson had communicated with Wallace, the city lord of the City of Shadows. He bunched his brows when he heard Lerickson's words. He sneered and said, Wallace sure is a petty man. But this is a good thing for me. After we exterminate the Han family, I will spread the news. If Brian is still alive, he will know what role Wallace played. When that time comes, Wallace will be on our side whether he is willing or not. That's right. Wallace has his own plans, and we have ours as well. Although we are the direct actors in this matter, Wallace will not be able to get away with it. Lerickson had no intention of letting Wallace off the hook. He had long planned how to drag Wallace into this mess. I didn't expect this Han family to be so hard to deal with. It seems like we have to be careful, said Hafs to Lerickson in a grave expression as he stared at the Han family shrouded in thick mist. Let's try attacking the fortress from a distance like we did earlier, Lerickson suggested. Hafs nodded and commanded, Move a distance away from the Han residence and attack together with them. Let's see if the Han family can withstand our joint attack. The Divine Guards of Hushvale City did not hesitate after hearing Hafs' command. They shot more light curtains of divine energy at the Han family shrouded in mist. They wanted to probe the situation inside the Han family. The intertwining light screen fell into the foggy Han family, but it was like a stone sinking into the ocean, without any signs of life. Hafs and Leriksen focused their attention but did not hear any screams from the Han family. Not only that, when the various attacks landed on the Han family, there were no violent explosions. Something's not right. Needless to say, everyone knew that the House of Han, who was shrouded in thick fog, would not be easy to deal with. With the precedent of what happened in front of the fortress, they were all like birds that were startled by the mere twang of a bowstring. The first thing they thought about was how to protect their lives. Everyone, be careful. You, and you. The few of you, go inside and see what's going on. They might just be putting on a show, said Hafs as he pointed out a few more cannon fodder and ordered them to enter the Han family first. The hearts of the Hushvale City Divine Guards who were called out sank. They slowly and nervously entered the Han family. As soon as they entered the Han family shrouded in mist, they discovered that their vision was greatly affected. They could not see anything more than 10 meters away. When they stepped on the flat ground of the Han family, they felt as though they were riding the clouds. They felt that everything around them had become so unreal. Leriksen and Hafs focused their divine souls and paid close attention to every movement of the cannon fodder. They discovered that after the cannon fodder entered the Han family, they did not encounter the ferocious attacks that they had expected. With that, the two felt a little more at ease. However, they did not dare to let their guard down and continued to sense the movements of the cannon fodder. Gradually, the few of them went deep into the Han residence. However, after going around and around, they realized that they had no idea where the exit was. They walked around in the foggy area, but they couldn't find the end. They couldn't see a single building, and they couldn't sense any signs of life. Leriksen and Hafs wore puzzled expressions. They could sense the divine soul auras of the cannon fodder and their general location. However, the two discovered that the cannon fodder were only circling around a small area. No matter how hard they tried, they would not venture deeper. Hafs felt that it was rather odd and he had been cursing the cannon fodder outside. However, the cannon fodder that he had sent into the Han family did not seem to hear his voice at all. They were still circling around a small area as though they had lost their way. They could not venture deeper nor could they find a way back to report to their superiors. Hafs gradually grew impatient. He pointed at a few of his subordinates and instructed, "The few of you, go in from the other side. There might be some kind of spatial folding boundary set up inside. Keep an eye out. Don't be as useless as those guys who still can't find a way to get in or out. Don't worry, my lord. I cultivate in the Edict of Space. If there is a spatial folding boundary set up inside, I should be able to detect it," one of the divine guards assured Hafs before he dived into the boundary. Another group of soldiers charged into the Han family. They continued to wander around the misty area, trying to venture deeper into the Han family. However, for some unknown reason, as soon as they entered a specific area, they would all be knocked out as though they were drugged. They would wander around in a small area like the first group of soldiers. Hafs knew that the Han family would not be easy to deal with. He did not send any more of his subordinates deeper into the Han family. He turned to Leriksen and asked, "What do you think? There must be some kind of spatial energy inside. Otherwise, there's no way such a thing could happen. However, the person who set up the spatial defensive boundary must have a profound mastery of the energy of space. Your subordinates couldn't detect any clues at all. That's why they were trapped inside," Leriksen explained to Hafs after thinking for a moment. "What should we do then?" Hafs glanced at the few people around Leriksen and said in a deep voice, "I think it's time for you all to show your sincerity, right?" Hafs and Leriksen had come together with Leriksen. However, up until now, Leriksen and his companions had only sent out Hafs' subordinates from Hushvale City. Leriksen and his companions had yet to make a move. It was clearly not a result that Hafs would like to see. In any case, it was time for Leriksen and his companions to make a move. Leriksen put on a mischievous smile and nodded. "All right." He turned to a high god of lightning behind him and said, "Kinu, go in and have a look. Your energy of lightning can affect space." I believe that if you bombard the barrier with your energy of lightning, you should be able to destroy the spatial energy. The high god named Kinna bowed at Lerickson, and without saying a word, he turned into a bolt of lightning and flew towards the Han family shrouded in mist. As soon as he moved, thunder rumbled in the sky. Tiny lightning bolts slowly emerged from the dark clouds and gathered above the Han family. Inside the Han family, on top of a building shrouded in layers of mist, Balans wore a gloomy face and shouted, "Open the mirage window and lure them in." Hee, that's exactly what we're going to do. That guy cultivates the power of lightning. Let's give him a way out of this embarrassing situation. Retract the fog for now and leave this matter to me. Gilbert shouted excitedly as he dashed down while waving his arms and legs. Other than Han Shaw, Balans, Sanguiner, and Gilbert were the most familiar with the demonic formations in Fort Lossberg. Before Han Shaw left, he had explained the power of the demonic formations and how to activate them in detail. As all three of them had cultivated in demonic arts, they knew very well how powerful demonic formations could be. Under Han Shaw's guidance, they knew the situation inside out. Sanguiner, Gilbert, and Balans got to work. They temporarily concealed a portion of the demonic formations and activated another portion of the demonic formations that were used to create illusions. Everyone, after a while, the fog will disperse, and the window of illusion will be able to clearly show our appearances to the people outside. When that time comes, everyone has to pretend to be scared. It's best if you can add some movements that suggest that you're ready to escape. Sanguiner instructed Phoebe and the others. Don't worry, we know what to do. Emily smiled, indicating that she understood Sanguiner's words. Kindu entered the depths of the mist and summoned the energy of lightning above his head. Bolts of lightning shot down from the void and bombarded every corner of the Han family. As though some strange mechanism had been triggered, the thick mist that shrouded the Han family suddenly dispersed. Even the ominous dark clouds that were hovering above their heads started to sway. It gave the illusion that the clouds would dissipate at any moment. As though the mist had parted to reveal a rainbow, the Han family that had been blurry all along started to reveal the buildings inside to the outsiders. The members of the Han family wore terrified expressions. Helplessness and despair were written all over their faces. They were at a loss of what to do as they stared blankly at the scene outside. Many of them were fleeing in panic. The realistic scene had fooled everyone. Hafs had been waiting for this moment. He thought that the Han family's barriers had been destroyed by the High God's attack. Hafs licked his lips cruelly and howled, "Charge in! Kill them all!" Chapter 881. In the eyes of Hafs and Lerickson, the Han family no longer had anything to worry about. Wave after wave of High God Kinna's lightning bolts had destroyed all of the Han family's defenses and exposed the Han family. As the mist dissipated, the panic-stricken faces of the House of Han were revealed to the world. It seemed to further prove the desperation and helplessness of the House of Han. Even Hafs and Lerickson, the two most powerful leaders of the House of Han, were bewildered, much less the other divine guards. Therefore, at Haf's command, all the divine guards of Hushvale City, including Lerickson's divine guards, charged towards the House of Han that had just emerged from the mist. Those leading the charge were not the divine guards of Hushvale City, but Lerickson, Hafs, and those subordinates of Lerickson's. They were the strongest experts of the party. In the minds of Hafs and Lerickson, the Han family that was unguarded at this moment posed no threat. The wealth that the Han family had accumulated over the years seemed to be dazzling and blinding. They were the first to charge at the Han family. Before they were certain that the Han family was safe, the few leaders did not make a move. But now that the Han family was no longer a threat, they charged at the forefront. They wanted to seize all of the Han family's wealth and resources as quickly as possible. In an instant, the group led by Hafs and Lerickson had entered the Han family. They headed towards the most luxurious building of the Han family where Phoebe and Statholm resided. They intended to seize the most important building first. Ha! Gilbert laughed maniacally and shouted, "Demonic formation, reactivate!" Rays of colorful light suddenly shot into the sky from every corner of the building. It was as though the Han family had turned into an enormous whirlpool. The mist that had just dispersed gathered at an even faster speed. The Han family was once again shrouded in thick mist. At the same time, chilly winds blew past. Ear-piercing wails and howls sounded from every corner of the building. In an instant, the Han family was filled with all kinds of evil energies. The evil energies took effect at the same time and engulfed all living beings in the vicinity, preventing them from escaping from the enormous whirlpool. Hafs immediately sensed that something was amiss. He absent-mindedly shouted, "Not good! Everyone, retreat!" Haf's shout came a little too late. Most of the divine guards from Hushvale's city had already entered the city. There were only a few dozen divine guards left outside, and they were the weakest of the group. Lerikson's face jolted. He sensed an uneasy aura from the energies that soared into the sky. He suddenly realized that he had fallen into someone else's trap. The feeling made him very uncomfortable. He felt that he had been on the passive side all along. Strange sounds resounded in every area. Suddenly, a strange power appeared in every area. Those demonic arrays began to operate. Illusion arrays, poison arrays, combined soul arrays, and all kinds of other demonic arrays suddenly burst out, firmly trapping the invaders who had gone deep into the area. It was at this moment that the horn of death was blown. Under the effects of the demonic formations, the invaders were slaughtered one after another. Corpses fell into puddles of blood. Strange beams of light shot out from every direction like dense spiderwebs, slicing the invaders into pieces. The members of the Han family standing in the middle of the building wore cold and callous expressions. They were in a very pleasant mood as they looked at the wretched situation in every corner of the building. Being in this building, Phoebe and the others weren't affected by the demonic formations of the House of Han. They could see the true destructive attacks of the demonic formations very clearly. They saw the corpses being torn apart and splattered everywhere. They saw the death of those people, the miserable screams and struggles of those people. Life seemed so fragile at this moment. The divine guards of Hushvale City who used to flaunt their prowess were as weak as newborn babies. They could not find a single solution to the bizarre attacks that they had never seen before. All they could do was wait to be slaughtered. "Ha, it's good that they're dead. They deserve to be killed for daring to barge into our Han family," shouted Gilbert crazily. He pointed at the nearest areas and explained to Statholm, Candide, and the others how the demonic formations worked. Balance, Gilbert, and Emily had the deepest understanding of the demonic formations. Apart from the three of them, even Phoebe, Emily, and the others didn't know much about the demonic formations. Although they had confidence in Han Shu and felt that the demonic formations would be effective before they saw the demonic formations in action, they still couldn't help but feel apprehensive and uncertain about the situation. But now that they had personally witnessed the demonic formations deployed by Han Shu before he left, they finally understood why Gilbert and Sanguiner were so confident that the demonic formations would make the intruders suffer. At this moment, Statholm, Ermike, Phoebe, and the others were at a loss for words. They had once again acknowledged the miraculous abilities of Han Shu, and regarded Han Shu as a super-powerful character who could bring them miracles. Their impression of Han Shu's invincibility grew deeper and deeper. Hee, it's not fun to just watch from here. I'm going down to kill! With bloodshot eyes, Sandwith let out a hideous grin and suddenly leaped into one of the demonic formations. Wielding his broadsword that was glowing with blood-red radiance, he began slaughtering the intruders inside the demonic formations. Without saying a word, Balans also flew into the demonic formations. His killing intent soared to the sky, and with a flash of the slender flying sword in his hand, he cut an intruder in half. When Statholm, Ermike, and the others saw Sanguiner and Balans rushing down, they also wanted to try. But Gilbert, who was above, hurriedly stopped them. "Everyone, stay here and watch carefully. Those demonic formations don't recognize you. If you get trapped in them, you'll be in trouble." "Then why are Sanguiner and Balans fine?" asked Phoebe with a frown. Before Master left, he let the three of us in and told us how to walk through each demonic formation and what to pay attention to at each step. The two of them remembered all of it clearly, so they could charge around unscrupulously without being affected by the demonic formations. Gilbert put on a mischievous smile and said, "I can't remember that many steps. Even I don't dare to walk around casually in there. That's why I didn't go down. As for you guys, I don't think it's a good idea to go down there and risk your lives." Upon hearing those words, Statholm, Emily, and the others were stunned. They exchanged glances with each other and gave up. Even Lerickson and Hofs were unable to break free from the demonic formation for a short period of time. Even now, they were still trapped in the demonic formation. Phoebe and the others were aware of their own limitations and knew better than to show off at a time like this. "Brian is just too incredible. I don't think we have anything to worry about this time. Hundreds of our people have died in the demonic formations," said Phoebe, who had been on tenterhooks. She put on a somewhat relaxed face. Upon hearing those words, the others nodded and smiled in agreement. It was as though they no longer cared about the fiendish spirits down there. "Don't let your guard down. The demonic formations are powered by the yuan energy of heaven and earth and the energy of the demon generals that Master left behind. Master said that the demonic formations cannot last forever. Let's wait and see. When Sanguiner and Balans have killed enough and when the power of the demonic formations gradually dissipates, we must retreat as far as we can," said Gilbert as he poured a bucket of cold water on everyone's nerves. Everyone was immediately beaten back to their original state. After hearing Gilbert's words, they all recognized the situation and threw away their unrealistic fantasies. They began to carefully think about how to protect themselves. "Gilbert, how long can the demonic formations last?" asked Statholm with his brows bunched. "It's hard to say. It depends on the rate at which the demonic formations consume the yuan energy. In any case, the demonic formations only have so much energy. Once the energy is depleted, the demonic formations will cease to function. We should make preparations in advance and leave as soon as possible, while Lerickson and Hof's forces are still trapped." Gilbert let out a helpless sigh and said, "Damn it, if Master was here, none of these invaders would be able to leave this place alive. Sigh, it's a pity that we don't have anyone on our side who can deal with experts of Lerickson and Hof's level. Otherwise, humph. Since it's better to leave as soon as possible, let's cut the crap. Gilbert, notify Sanguiner and Balans that we will immediately activate the airship and leave Fort Lossberg as soon as we can," commanded Emily decisively. "Don't worry, Sanguiner and Balans will know what to do," replied Gilbert. Emily, Phoebe, Statholm, and the others hastily issued orders for the invaders to enter the secret underground chamber at the bottom of the building. They wanted to leave the Han family as soon as possible and leave this perilous region as soon as possible. One figure after another shuttled through the building. The Han clan's guards, who were gathered in the various rooms, dived down and left through a wide underground passageway. Sanguiner and Balans shuttled back and forth between the demonic formations. They avoided Lerickson, Hofs, and the other high gods as they madly slaughtered the invaders who were only mid-gods. Sanguiner and Balans were in high spirits. They shuttled back and forth between the demonic formations as if they were having a competition. Their bodies were drenched in blood and they looked incomparably ferocious. "Sandwis, old man, get ready to retreat!" Gilbert shouted from inside the building just as they were about to lose themselves. The two slowly regained their senses. They exchanged a glance with each other before they simultaneously darted into the building and joined up with Gilbert. Chapter 882. Although the members of the Han family had left, the demonic formations of the Han family at the center of Fort Lossberg were still operating. Every once in a while, miserable shrieks of despair would be heard from the demonic formations. As Lerickson and Hofs were trapped in the Heart Demon Purgatory formation, the two had no idea what was going on outside. When the Heart Demons attacked them, they fell into a state of confusion. In such a state, Lerickson and Hof's divine soul could not pay attention to what was going on outside. They had to focus all their energy on resisting the heart demons. As the two had cultivated to late-stage high god realm, their willpower was much stronger than that of an average god. They were able to use their divine soul to resist the heart demons. Around them, some of the more fragile mid-gods lost their minds one after another. They had lost their sense of self after being attacked by the heart demons and embarked on the path of self-destruction. Time flew by and a few days went by in the blink of an eye. The yuan energy supporting the House of Han was gradually fading away. The demonic formations were losing their power one after another. Many exhausted divine guards of Hush Vale City were lucky enough to survive the trip to the gates of hell. Slowly, all the yuan energy disappeared. The source of energy supporting the Han family's demonic formations had finally dried up. The thick mist that shrouded the Han family had long disappeared. At a glance, all the buildings in the Han family's residence could be seen clearly under the sunlight. After the mist dissipated, the demonic formations had also lost their power. Around the buildings, at the center of the towering pillars, and among the plants were corpses of all shapes and sizes. These were Hoff's divine guards from Hush Vale City. They were either missing limbs, drained of blood, or bleeding from their 7 orifices. All of them had died horribly. Of the 1,000 divine guards who had come to Fort Lossberg, only 300 were still alive. Moreover, they were all exhausted and not in the same condition as before. Hoffs took in the scene of devastation before his eyes. An extreme sense of desolation and rage rose from his heart. This was not an outcome that Hoffs wished to see. He had no idea how he should continue looking at the corpses strewn all over the place. At this moment, Hoffs was at a loss. He felt a sense of helplessness, despair, and defeat. For a moment, he did not even think of pursuing the culprit who caused all this. Those divine guards from Hush Vale City who were lucky enough to survive the attack were wearing dejected faces. Their eyes were filled with fear and cowardice. They huddled together and tried their best to recover the divine energy in their bodies. Larrickson and the others were also very surprised. They did not expect that the strange energy alone would cause Hoffs to lose so many of his subordinates. Although Larrickson was rather surprised, he did not feel sad because none of the high gods who came with him had suffered any casualties. Keanu, you guys go and search. See if the Han family members are still around. Larrickson pondered for a moment before he gave an order in a cold voice. At the same time, he shot a meaningful glance at Keanu. Keanu knew Larrickson very well. He understood that Larrickson was implying something from the meaningful glance. Keanu nodded knowingly and immediately got to work. He went to some of the tallest buildings in the city and searched for everything in the Han family. Given Larrickson's strength, as soon as all the demonic formations lost their effect, he sensed that there was no one else in the Han family apart from himself. The reason why Larrickson said that was because he wanted to find the Han family's wealth. Keanu and the others were well aware of that. Therefore, Larrickson's target was the same. Hoffs was still immersed in grief and bewilderment. But when he heard Larrickson's instructions to Keanu and the others, he immediately understood what Larrickson was trying to do. Suppressing the anger in his heart, Hoffs shouted, "Search the place! Someone has killed someone! Take anything valuable!" The exhausted Hush Vale City Divine Guards immediately put on bitter faces and started moving again after hearing Hoff's order. They quickly searched through the Han family. 10 minutes later, Keanu, and the Hush Vale City Divine Guards returned one after another. Their faces were dispirited. "My lord, not a single person was left alive. Not a single energy crystal or black crystal coin was left. Those damned Han family bastards. They took everything away," Keanu said to Larrickson in a furious tone. Phoebe had started making preparations the moment she received word that Larrickson and the others had disappeared. Naturally, she would not leave anything valuable for them. The only valuable things in the Han family were the demonic formations that had lost their yuan energy support. Unfortunately, Larrickson and Hoffs did not know how to use demonic formations. Even if they moved everything away, they would never be able to use demonic formations to attack people like the Han family. For Han Shaw, Sanguiner, and Balans who knew how to deploy demonic formations, the materials used to deploy demonic formations were very useful. But for Hafs and Larixen, those materials were completely useless. Damn it, they can't get far. Let's go after them. Humph, other than us, Wallace must have made other arrangements. They won't be able to leave the City of Shadows so easily. Larixen coldly groaned and said, They must have escaped towards the Death Dominion. Let's go after them. At this point, Hafs had nothing else to say. So many of his men had died. No matter what, he couldn't give up. Even if it was just for the sake of his subordinates, he had to kill every last member of the House of Han. Moreover, those members of the Han family might have a large amount of black crystal coins with them. Hafs would not let Larixen take advantage of the situation. Although many of his men had died, Hafs was confident that he could take down the Han family. Hafs had several high gods on his side, while the Han family did not seem to have a single high god. Hafs was certain that as long as they fought head-on, they would be able to emerge victorious even if they had only a few high gods and their remaining troops. Go after them. Hafs gave the same command. The party that had suffered a crushing defeat at Lossberg once again marched towards the Death Dominion. In a deep tunnel far from Fort Lossberg, Ralph wore a gloomy face as he waited for the latest news. A silhouette flew from the distance and landed in front of Ralph. He knelt on one knee and reported, My lord, we have received accurate news that the members of the Han family are on their way. Ralph put on a delighted face and sneered. Very good. We have not wasted our time waiting for them. After taking a short pause, Ralph asked again. Oh right, what's the situation at Fort Lossberg? Larixen and Haf's men have entered the fort. Even if the Han family managed to escape, they should have suffered great losses, right? Ralph shook his head and replied, I don't know the exact situation at Fort Lossberg. Before Larixen and Hafs arrived, all those unrelated to the fort had been asked to leave the fort. Even our spies couldn't enter the fort. All they could hear was the loud explosions from the energy cannons of the fort. Hee, that's great. It seems that the Han family is putting up a desperate fight. Ralph put on a hideous smile and said, But Larixen and Hafs both possess late-stage high god strength. Not to mention, Hafs and Larixen also have high god subordinates. In addition to nearly 1,000 Hushvale City Divine Guards, I reckon that even if not all of the Han family are dead, not many of them will be able to escape. My lord is wise indeed. I believe that all the wealth that the Han family has accumulated must be in the hands of those who managed to escape, said the man in a flattering manner. My lord, you are the one who calculated everything. Ralph respectfully praised Wallace. Shortly after, he commanded in a cold and stern voice, Get ready! Block the path of the airship and kill all the remaining members of the Han family. We have enough time and energy to frame Hafs and Larixen. Even if Brian returns, he will kill Hafs and Larixen first. We can stay out of this. Ralph knew that his subordinates had been frightened by Han Shaw during the competition between the Seven Corps. Even though Han Shaw had disappeared for several years, they were still afraid of him. Ralph used this method to encourage his subordinates so that they would not have to worry about Han Shaw's life. Ralph's method proved to be very effective. When his subordinates heard that they would not have to bear any consequences and that they would not have to worry about being hunted down by Han Shaw, their spirits were lifted. Ralph secretly cursed when he saw the relieved expressions on his subordinates' faces. He thought to himself, What's so great about Han Shaw that he can intimidate my subordinates? While Ralph was plotting in his mind, Phoebe and the others on the airship were as calm as could be. As they advanced through the dense forest of the City of Shadows, they tried their best to avoid those unrelated to the City of Shadows. They also had to pay careful attention to their surroundings, fearing that they might run into those with malicious intentions. There are people gathering in Tanai Valley ahead, Sanguiner suddenly shouted coldly. I can feel their blood flowing. Every single one of them is very agitated. It seems that we are their target. Avoid them. Emily commanded decisively. We cannot stay in the City of Shadows for too long. We must leave this dangerous place as soon as possible. No matter who they are, it is best not to come into contact with them. But they won't let us hide. Sanguiner forced a smile and shook his head. He said, They are coming. It seems that we are indeed their target. But we don't know which side they are from. Although the airship saves energy, its speed is limited. It seems that we won't be able to avoid them. Statholm the old monster put on a grave face and said, Let's fight. Disembark from the airship and get into formation. Prepare for battle. Phoebe and Emily commanded at the same time. One figure after another descended from the huge bat. There were over 700 people in total, and they lined up in an orderly manner. They drew their god artifacts and waited silently for the arrival of the enemies. Every one of these 700 people were carefully selected experts. All of them had been tempered in the 8 Desolation and Torment formation and had been trained in the mountains near Fort Lossberg by Balans and the others. They knew how to coordinate demonic formations. Their minds were firm and indomitable. They were not affected by their enemies at all. Phoebe, Emily, Balans, Sanguiner, Gilbert, Statholm the old monster, and the others were standing at the front of the army. They turned their heads to look at the elite Han family guards behind them. They were secretly proud of themselves. With the sane cultivation realm, a team of Han family guards could fend off 2 or even 3 teams of others. With them around, Phoebe and the others felt a little more at ease. A few minutes later, the Second Corps Divine Guards led by Ralph gradually appeared and stopped in front of the Han family. Ralph had brought most of the Second Corps Divine Guards with him. They lined up densely in front of Phoebe, Emily, and the others. There were about 700 of them. Ralph, who was leading the group, wore a cold and sinister face. He stared at Phoebe and the others in an unfriendly manner and asked, Everyone, where are you going? I can't believe it's you, replied Phoebe in a cold voice. She did not expect that it would be Ralph blocking their way. It appeared that not only did Wallace acquiesce to Larrickson, Hafs, and the others' attack on Fort Lossberg, he had also sent Ralph to secretly participate in the attack. This is the territory of the City of Shadows. You Han family are citizens of the City of Shadows. And now, all the members of the Han family have gathered together and are heading towards the Death Dominion. What are you up to? Ralph seemed to have thought of an excuse beforehand. He sneered and said, It seems to me that you are planning to betray the City of Shadows. Hee, it's fortunate that I ran into you. Otherwise, who knows how much damage you will bring to the City of Shadows? Ran into you? Ha ha, how interesting. Statholm the old monster put on a mocking face and said, You traveled thousands of miles to this remote and desolate place and brought more than half of your Second Corps Divine Guards with you to block our way at the most opportune time and the most opportune place. And you have the nerve to say that we happened to bump into each other? Hee, what a coincidence! After listening to Stratholm's explanation, Ralph felt a little embarrassed. Even he himself felt that this coincidental reason was a little too far-fetched. Ralph let out a cold snort and said, I don't want to make things difficult for you. As long as you return to Fort Lossberg, I won't stop you. I will report this to Wallace and the others immediately. He will give you an explanation after he finds out what happened. After taking a short pause, Ralph continued in a cold and stern voice. But if you try to leave the City of Shadows, hee, don't blame me for being ruthless. Wallace? Doesn't he have any integrity? Phoebe was a straightforward person, and she did not want to play along with Ralph any longer. She said, Don't put on airs in front of me. Wallace has sent you to kill us. Do you think we will surrender and return to Fort Lossberg to die? How dare you speak rudely to the City Lord? It seems that you are determined to betray the City of Shadows. Ralph sneered and said, Then I have nothing else to say. He then waved his hand and instructed, Don't let traitors live. Kill them! Now that things had come to this, how could Phoebe and the others not know Ralph's true intentions? From the start to the end, they had never intended to let the House of Han off. Those excuses were completely to deliberately make things difficult for them. The final outcome was still to exterminate the House of Han. Ralph, do you think you can take us down? Sanguiner could no longer restrain himself. He said with bloodshot eyes. A few years ago, my master could easily defeat you. Now, although my master is no longer here, I can stop you all the same. As soon as he finished those words, Sanguiner's body emitted a mist of blood. The broadsword refined from blood crystal emitted a blood-red radiance that soared into the sky. Sanguiner and his broadsword flew at Ralph. His aura soared and soared. He turned into a streak of blood-red radiance as he charged at Ralph at lightning speed. Ralph's face that was brimming with confidence suddenly jolted. He had inquired about the Han family and knew that neither Han Shu nor Rose were with the Han family. He only knew of Han Shu and Rose among the true experts of the Han family. Without them, the Han family would not have a single high god. It was for this reason that Ralph dared to bring his men to stop the Han family. However, as soon as Sanguiner moved, Ralph suddenly sensed that the dense blood aura on his body contained an extremely powerful energy. The evil, bloodthirsty aura made Ralph feel threatened. It was obvious that this kind of energy was not something that a mid-god should possess. What Ralph did not know was that Sanguiner, Balance, and Gilbert who cultivated in Blood God mantra were extraordinary. A few years ago, during the competition of the 7th Corps, Sanguiner, Gilbert had the strength to contend against a mid-god and emerge victorious. After such a long time, Sanguiner, Gilbert had made tremendous progress. They now possessed the strength to fight against high gods of this world. The reason why Sanguiner, Balance, and Gilbert chose to abandon Fort Lostberg was that Larixon and Hofs both possessed late-stage high god strength and had several high gods under their command. The three knew that they were no match for Larixon, Hofs, and Gilbert. However, Ralph was just a mid-stage high god. Sandwis might be able to put up a fight against someone of that level. He might be able to suppress Ralph with his Blood God mantra and give the House of Han an opportunity to eliminate the 2nd Corps Divine Guards. Locke, I will stop this guy. The two of you, get rid of the rest, shouted Ralph. He charged at Sanguiner, who was releasing terrifying blood aura. Fearing that something might happen to Ralph, Wallace dispatched 2 early-stage high god experts to participate in the operation. They were Wallace's trusted aides for the past 2 years. They rarely showed their faces in the House of Saint because they wanted to ensure that the House of Han was annihilated without anyone knowing about it. At Ralph's command, 2 early-stage high god experts charged out from the 2nd Corps Divine Guards. One cultivated in the energy of darkness and the other cultivated in the energy of earth. Both possessed early-stage high god strengths. Balance and Gilbert exchanged glances with each other before they simultaneously flew out and stopped the 2 trusted aides of Wallace. Although Balance and Gilbert did not progress as rapidly as Sanguiner, they were still much faster than Phoebe and the others. They could handle an early-stage high god that had just entered the realm of high god. Han family Divine Guards, charge at them with all your might. Let them see who is the strongest, commanded Phoebe with a cold face. The number of Ralph's Divine Guards was about the same as that of the House of Han's Divine Guards. However, in terms of team strength, the House of Han had proven itself to be the mightiest in the last battle against the 7th Corps. Back then, the 5th Corps Divine Guards who had only trained for a year were able to defeat the elite members of the 2nd Corps. Now that so many years had passed and the Han family Divine Guards had tempered themselves in the 8 Desolation and Torment formation, it was obvious who would emerge victorious in the battle. Chapter 883. The Han family guards were like an invincible, cold sword that pierced towards the 2nd Corps Divine Guards brought by Ralph. The Han family guards were arranged in small groups of 3 to 5 and a dozen to a large group. They were arranged neatly and orderly. They maintained the most appropriate distance between each other. When charging at Ralph's 2nd Corps Divine Guards, the Han family guards seemed to have a tacit understanding with each other. They used the most efficient demonic formations to open up a path for them, increasing their offensive strength to the maximum. Wherever their blades pointed, they would unleash an astonishing amount of power. The Han family guards wore indifferent expressions. They calmly searched for their own positions, making sure that every step they took would not make the slightest mistake. If one were to observe from above, one would discover that the distance between each group of Han family guards was astonishingly uniform. There were even larger groups formed between the groups. Those guards with profound strength and outstanding offensive strength were at the outer edge of the formation, acting as the spearhead of the attack. Those guards with slightly weaker strength but cultivated in the elemental energy of earth, water, or other elemental energies stood in the middle. They used their energy to form layers upon layers of boundaries to defend against the attacks coming from the outside. These Han family guards might not be much stronger than the second corps divine guards in individual strength. But when they banded together, and used the energy they were most proficient in at the most opportune moment, the energy they could erupt with would suddenly become terrifying. The second corps divine guards had taken defensive measures right from the start. As Ralph, Balance, and Gilbert, who were leading the charge, were obstructed by Sanguiner, Balance, and Gilbert, and without the three high gods to open up a path for them, in addition to the fact that the second corps divine guards were somewhat fearful of the strength of the Han family guards, they naturally adopted a defensive stance. However, they had clearly underestimated the strength of the Han family guards. Under the cone-shaped assault formation, the defensive walls that the second corps divine guards hastily formed were as fragile as paper. Upon contact, they were effortlessly torn to shreds. Immediately after, the Han family guards thrust themselves into the middle of the second corps divine guards. Small and large groups spread out like a lotus flower and reaped the lives of the second corps divine guards at the outermost perimeter. The difference in numbers between the two sides wasn't too great. However, when the second corps divine guards' attacks landed on the Han family guards, the attacks would be neutralized by the Han family divine guards who were focused on defense. On the other hand, the Han family divine guards who were in charge of killing could focus all their energy on killing the Han family divine guards. With that, a strange phenomenon occurred. The attacks of the second corps divine guards would not have any effect on the House of Han. At most, they would cause some injuries to the House of Han, but none of the injuries were fatal. However, when the attacks of the Han family divine guards fell into the middle of the second corps divine guards, they would cause great casualties. The lack of coordination between the second corps divine guards was immediately exposed. They did not know how to work together. Every time an attack was launched, they would put all their energy into protecting their own lives. It was obvious that their attacks would be ineffective. They were very selfish and would not care about the lives of others. They would even sacrifice their wounded to kill the enemy when a fatal attack was launched. The gap between the two sides was immediately exposed. As time went by, the gap between the two sides grew bigger and bigger. Most of the miserable shrieks and screams were from the second corps divine guards. In just a short while, more than 100 of them had died under the bombardment of the Han family guards. The Han family divine guards, on the other hand, only suffered a dozen or so wounded and 2 divine guards were killed. The Han family divine guards who knew how to coordinate and utilize demonic formations to maximize their offensive and defensive strength were far superior to the second corps divine guards in terms of teamwork. In this large-scale battle, the Han family divine guards had the absolute upper hand and were slaughtering the second corps divine guards one after another. Ralph was tangled up by Sanguiner. Under the frenzied barrage of crimson rays, Ralph felt rather helpless. He did not expect that Sanguiner would possess such formidable strength. Ralph was forced into a passive position right from the start of the battle. Ralph's heart was filled with remorse when he saw his divine guards screaming and screaming. Not only had he underestimated the strength of Sanguiner, Balance, and the others, but he had also misjudged the situation. He did not expect that not only were the Han family divine guards that escaped from Fort Lossberg not injured, but there were even a few who were exhausted. What the hell is wrong with Hofs and Larrickson? 2 late-stage high god experts, and so many Hushvale City Divine Guards had failed to inflict the slightest damage on the House of Han. What in the world was going on? Ralph cursed and cursed as he watched his Divine Guards die one after another. He did not know what to do next. Before him, Sanguiner was glaring at him with his blood-red eyes. A broadsword that reeked of blood whizzed through the air, causing the blood in Ralph's body to become chaotic and out of control. Ralph was confident that he could defeat Sanguis. He could see that Sanguis was merely relying on his special energy to destabilize Ralph's blood and his frenzied attacks to gain the upper hand. From Ralph's point of view, Sanguiner was like an arrow at the end of its flight and wouldn't be able to hold on for long. All he needed to do was evade Sanguiner's barrage of attacks for a while before he could defeat Sanguiner with ease. However, Ralph knew that if this went on, the casualties of his subordinates would only increase. If he were to fight Sanguis to the death, he would have to pay a terrible price even if he could defeat Sanguis in the end. Sanguis' frenzied attacks would only increase in number. Ralph did not want to lose his life for the sake of a single Sanguiner. Therefore, he had been silently stalling for time. He would rather let his Divine Guards die one after another than risk their lives to fight Sanguiner. Ralph, who was silently defending against Sanguiner's barrage of attacks, was looking forward to seeing Lockwood and Wallace's reinforcements. While defending against Sanguiner's attacks, Ralph paid close attention to their movements. Ralph felt a chill run down his spine when he saw what was happening. Lockwood and Wallace's two trusted aides were also being obstructed. And from the looks of it, their situation was even worse than Ralph's. Under the frenzied barrage of attacks from Ballins and Gilbert, Lockwood and Wallace's situation was worrying. They were like candles in the wind that could be blown out at any moment. It's no wonder that the House of Han was able to win the last battle. They even said that they didn't send any high gods to participate in the battle. Ralph cursed in his mind. He did not know that Sanguiner, Ballins, and the others did not possess the strength that they did today. He believed that the reason why the Fifth Corps was able to suppress his Second Corps was because Sanguiner, Gilbert, and Sanguiner were too powerful. I can't let this go on. Otherwise, we will all be finished. After weighing the situation, Ralph decided not to passively take defensive measures anymore. He began to attack without regard for his own life. He began to fight Sanguiner with all his might. After all, Ralph possessed mid-stage high god strength. When he no longer had to be so cautious, when he no longer had a knot in his heart, his strength had improved tremendously. While expending divine energy to stabilize his blood flow, he continued to fight Sanguiner with all his might. With that, Sanguiner could no longer gain the upper hand. He had no choice but to fight even more desperately against Ralph. It did not take long for his body to be covered with wounds. However, for some unknown reason, whenever the wounds caused blood to gush out, Sanguiner felt that the blood in his body became even more vigorous. His broadsword that reeked of blood glowed even brighter. The more he fought, the fiercer he became. In just a dozen or so minutes, the Second Corps Divine Guards were wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves. More than 300 of them had been killed by the Han family guards. The Han family, on the other hand, had lost 3 more dead and more than 20 wounded. Compared to the losses suffered by the Second Corps, the Han family guards had won an overwhelming victory. "Go all out, kill every last one of them," commanded Phoebe from the Han family guard center with a cold face. She could tell that Sanguiner, Ballins, Gilbert, and the others were fighting with all their might and might not be able to hold on for much longer. They had to defeat the Second Corps Divine Guards as quickly as possible so that they could deal with Ralph, Rockwood, and the other two. Under Phoebe's command, the House of Han's army changed yet again. They changed from a cone-shaped charging formation to a lotus blade formation that scattered in all directions. The 700 soldiers were divided into 7 brigades. They spread out like blades and started slaughtering the flustered Second Corps Divine Guards. It was obvious that this formation was even more lethal. As soon as the 7 companies spread out, they dragged the Second Corps Divine Guards into the abyss of death. Their blood flowed like rivers as they wailed like ghosts and howled like wolves. Ralph felt a chill in his heart. He suddenly realized that at this rate, even if he managed to kill Sanguiner, he wouldn't have many of his subordinates left alive. Ralph was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. After calmly thinking for a moment, Ralph suddenly shouted, "Mission failed! Everyone, retreat!" Upon hearing those words, Ralph took the initiative to withdraw from Sanguis's side. He no longer wanted to be entangled with Sanguis. Rockwood and the other two high gods immediately retreated from Balans and Gilbert after hearing Ralph's order. Without uttering a word, they turned around and flew towards the nearby Tanai. The Second Corps Divine Guards who received the order to retreat fled from the Blood River Hell with all their might. Their hearts were filled with fear. They never thought that they would be so weak against the same number of people. From beginning to end, they could not put up any resistance at all. They were killed one by one like babies. The Han family guards calmly continued their pursuit after Ralph and his Second Corps Divine Guards. They wanted to seize the opportunity to inflict as much damage as possible on Ralph's Second Corps Divine Guards. "Don't chase after them!" shouted Statholm. He hastily stopped the guards from pursuing. "Time is of the essence. We don't have time to waste with them." "Come back!" shouted Phoebe. She too was very calm. She ordered her men to retreat. Statholm and Phoebe knew that Hafs, Larrickson, and the others would not give up so easily. They might already be on their way. Once Hafs, Larrickson, and the others caught up with them, they would not be able to use the demonic formations of the Han family. Every second was critical and they had no time to waste on Ralph and his party. If Ralph and his party failed to take them down today, Ralph would not be able to escape death when they returned to the City of Shadows to settle the score with Wallace. In their minds, Ralph was no longer a threat to them. He would not be able to stir up any trouble in the future. They decided to spare his life for now, as they would be able to take his life in the future. After hearing Statholm and Phoebe's words, the Han family guards hastily retreated and formed a defensive formation around Phoebe and Statholm. "Sanguiner, Gilbert, how are you doing?" It was at this moment that Emily suddenly cried out. The party stared blankly for a moment, and immediately turned their attention to Sanguiner, Balans, and Gilbert. The three were drenched in sweat after the battle. It was obvious that they had expended a great deal of energy. Sanguiner, in particular, seemed to be supported by an indomitable spirit. When Ralph left, Sanguiner's body was flushed red and he was gasping for breath. He even staggered. It was only after Sanguiner relaxed that he realized that he had expended a great deal of energy in his desperate attacks. "Sanguiner, are you all right?" Although Gilbert was also sweating profusely, his expression was relatively normal. He immediately asked with concern when he saw that Sanguiner was in such a state. "I'm fine. I'll be fine in a moment." Sanguiner forced a smile. The scarlet broadsword in his hand suddenly flew out and spun at high speed in midair. Strands of bizarre energy were released from Sanguis' broadsword. All of a sudden, the blood of the Second Corps Divine Guards who died seemed to be attracted by some sort of energy. It turned into strands of blood mist and converged on Sanguis' broadsword. The blood mist slowly condensed into streams of blood that flowed on the broadsword like water. The droplets of blood flew into the air and condensed on the broadsword. The pungent smell of blood in the area was nauseating. Gradually, not a single drop of blood could be seen on the ground. It was at this moment that Sanguiner's broadsword flew back into Sanguiner's hand. Streaks of blood-red radiance passed through the broadsword and entered Sanguiner's body. Sanguiner's eyes, which were extremely weak a moment ago, started to shine brightly. After a while, Sanguiner's previous dejection was swept away and he became spirited again. Sanguiner let out a light sigh and smilingly said, "All right, I'm fine now. Let's go, we can continue our journey." Statholm the old monster, Ermite Cotton, Phoebe, and the Han family guards were all dumbstruck. They did not expect that Sanguiner, who was barely able to stand a moment ago, could use such a bizarre method to become spirited and regain his strength. It was simply unimaginable. "What's there to be surprised about?" Master's strength is not something you can comprehend. Sanguiner is Master's disciple. It's normal for him to recover so quickly. When Gilbert saw that the crowd was staring blankly, he impatiently urged, hurry up, hurry up! Do we have to wait for those guys to catch up? Upon hearing those words, the crowd came back to their senses. They hastily boarded the airship and continued their journey towards the Death Dominion. Chapter 884. At the border of the Darkness and Death Dominions, Ronson Canyon. The Ronson Canyon was the only way from the Darkness Dominion to the Death Dominion. Many god hunters frequented the Ronson Canyon. It was said that the headquarters of the most powerful god hunter factions in the Darkness and Death Dominions were located in Tanai Canyon. Merchants from the Darkness and Death Dominions would only dare to enter the Ronson Canyon after being escorted by a large number of divine guards. But recently, the Ronson Canyon had been much more peaceful than before. It was said that the most powerful god hunter faction in the canyon had left for unknown reasons. With the disappearance of the god hunter faction that wreaked havoc in the Death Dominion, the smaller god hunter factions in the canyon seemed to have quieted down and no longer dared to wreak havoc in the Death Dominion. On this day, a large army arrived at the vast territory of the Ronson Canyon. An enormous flying bat was flying towards the canyon. It was as though a huge dark cloud had blotted out the sky. Figures could be seen on the flying bat. The cold eyes of the guards were glowing with a frightening light. They were vigilantly scanning the forest around them for enemies that might suddenly appear. We have finally arrived at the Ronson Canyon. Once we cross the Ronson Canyon, we will be in the territory of the Death Dominion. Hafs and Larrickson will not dare to enter the Death Dominion and wreak havoc there. Once we cross the canyon, we will be met by our allies in the Death Dominion. Statholm heaved a sigh of relief. He had been too tense and worried about Larrickson, Hafs, and the others. He did not dare to relax for even a moment. Do not let your guard down. The Ronson Canyon is located at the border of the Darkness and Death Dominions. God hunters are rampant in this area. Ballins had served in Erebus' Third Corps for several years and knew a thing or two about the Ronson Canyon. He knew that Tanai Canyon had several god hunter factions that were wreaking havoc in the Darkness and Death Dominions. God hunters? Gilbert put on a disdainful smile and said, with our Han family's current strength, why should we be afraid of those useless god hunters? It's best if they don't come. Otherwise, we'll just kill them and bury them. Don't boast. Ballins shot a cold glance at Gilbert and groaned. If it's just a god hunter faction, there's nothing to worry about. If it's an alliance formed by a few god hunter factions, we won't be able to escape easily. After taking a short pause, as though to warn Gilbert, Ballins continued. In Tanai there is a group of god hunters running rampant in Ronson Gorge. Even to this day, not many know who their leader is. They dare to attack any traveling merchants, even those protected by a large number of divine guards. This god hunter faction is very famous in the Ronson Canyon. All the cities in the Death Dominion have dispatched many divine guards to encircle them, but to no avail. They have been running amok in the Ronson Canyon for decades. No ordinary family clan can contend against them. After hearing Ballins's words, Gilbert's expression turned grave. He put away his frivolous attitude and asked in astonishment, who could be so powerful? Ballins shook his head and said in an indifferent manner, I've told you, not many know who their leader is. Perhaps only those who are also god hunters know his name and identity. However, it is said that the leader is very young. He cultivates in the energy of death and wields a 3-meter-long bone spear. What a powerful fellow. I wonder if he is stronger than Sanguiner, muttered Gilbert as he glanced at Sanguiner from the corner of his eyes. Even if Sanguiner has the strength, he doesn't have the talent to be a leader, said Ballins as he looked at Sanguiner. Who said so? He, after hearing your boasting, I really want to meet him. Sanguiner's strength had been advancing by leaps and bounds recently. Now, he no longer cared about many people. He was very displeased that Ballins was bragging about a young man. He did not think that he was inferior to anyone else. We better pray that we don't run into him. Otherwise, we might not even make it out of the Ronson Canyon alive, said Bollins in an indifferent manner. He did not seem to be affected by Sanguiner's words. Everyone be careful. Larrickson and Hoffs aren't the kind of people who would give up easily. Ralph won't give up so easily either. The Ronson Canyon is vast, and we can't afford to stay here any longer. We must leave as soon as possible. Emily was not interested in the conversation between Sanguiner and Bollins. All she was thinking about was how to bring the Hahn family members to safety. There was a waterfall in the Ronson Canyon. Behind the waterfall were a dozen or so caves of various sizes. In each cave, there were human heads moving about. In the largest cave, supported by 3 small energy towers, a dozen or so God Hunter leaders were having a discussion in low voices. Their eyes glinted with ferocious glints. We have found out that those people are from the Hahn family of the City of Shadows. The celestial pro-pharmacy in the death, destruction, and darkness dominions now belongs to the Hahn family. Quincy, one of the God Hunter leaders, was beaming with joy. He greedily encouraged the other God Hunter leaders. The celestial pro-pharmacy is rich and powerful. This is a big piece of juicy meat. My men have observed that the Hahn family guards cultivate in all kinds of energies. Not only will we be able to obtain energy from them, but we will also be able to get their black crystal coins. Hee, do you want to join forces? The power displayed by the House of Hahn's airship was not to be underestimated. There was no way a single God Hunter faction could take them down. Therefore, the leaders of all the major God Hunters in Ronson Canyon had gathered in this cave to discuss whether or not they should join forces to take down the House of Hahn. This is a deal. Another God Hunter leader, Krizin, put on a sinister smile and said, The Hahn family's reputation is not well known. The fact that they left the City of Shadows means that they are in dire straits. If we join forces, we can definitely take them down. Count me in. Count me in too. Count me in too. I'm joining in too. The God Hunter leaders who had come to the Ronson Canyon had the intention of joining forces to take down the Hahn family. Under the instigation of Quincy, the most powerful God Hunter leader in the Ronson Canyon, they declared that the Hahn family that had entered the Ronson Canyon would be their prey. Have you all forgotten someone? Suddenly, a discordant voice sounded. Scarlet, one of the God Hunter leaders, slightly bunched her willowy brows. She asked hesitantly, But that guy's surname is Hahn, isn't it? The Hahn surname isn't common. Could he be related to the Hahn family? Scarlet was the only female among the God Hunter leaders. Her rather delicate face had 2 criss-cross scars that made this woman, who was supposed to be beautiful, look hideous. Even though she had a voluptuous and alluring body, most men would avoid her due to her unflattering face. Scarlet cultivated in the energy of death and possessed early-stage high god strength. She was neither weak nor strong among the God Hunter leaders. However, due to her outstanding intelligence, the force she led had never suffered any major losses. After hearing Scarlet's words, the God Hunter leaders who had just agreed to the deal bunched their brows. It was obvious that they knew who Scarlet was talking about. Krizin hesitated for a moment before he said in a deep voice, It can't be that coincidental, right? I have never heard of that guy having any family or friends. But if he really is related to the Hahn family, we will have to reconsider our decision. Quincy's face turned cold, and he replied, That's right. That guy used to be the strongest expert in the Ronson Canyon, but he is no longer in the canyon. Moreover, his followers had clearly stated that they would no longer meddle in the affairs of the Ronson Canyon. Besides, he has never mentioned that he is from the Hahn family, and he is no longer in the Ronson Canyon. What are you worried about? You're right. We are indeed overthinking. He shouldn't be related to the Hahn family. Krizin put on an embarrassed smile and said, We are just scaring ourselves. The plan remains the same. I'm in. That's right. Quincy burst into laughter. He looked at Scarlet impatiently and said, Women are always so fussy. If you don't want to be a part of this, just leave. Without your followers, they won't affect the overall situation. Humph, we can still get a little more. Scarlet put on a gloomy face. Each of them vigilantly observed their surroundings. Then, they quickly moved into formation on the flying bat. Emily, Phoebe, and the others looked around nervously and shouted, "Everyone, be careful! Get ready for battle! There's no need! There's only one person, and it's a woman!" Sanguiner saw that the Han family guards on the airship were on high alert because of his shout. He laughed and said, "Don't be nervous. That woman isn't particularly strong. I can handle her." The guards heaved a sigh of relief after hearing his words. They were curious as to why a woman would come alone at this time. Tanai did not know anyone in the Ronson Canyon, and it was obvious that a woman could not cause any harm to them. So, what was she doing here? After a while, Scarlet gradually appeared from a stone forest in the distance. She wore a cold and stern expression. "Ha!" Before Scarlet could approach, Fanny, Lisa, and the other ladies on the airship exclaimed in surprise. They were all frightened by the two hideous-looking scars on Scarlet's face. "Halt!" shouted Ballins coldly. His killing intent condensed and locked on to Scarlet. Scarlet was startled. She did not expect that Ballins would release such an intense killing intent just by looking at her. Scarlet felt a chill in her heart. She thought that the Han family was not as weak as Quincy had described them to be. Ballins alone possessed high god strength. "I wonder if there's someone stronger?" Scarlet was about to speak when she suddenly raised her willowy eyebrows. She stared at Ballins with bright eyes. She sensed a trace of very strange energy from Ballins. She had also sensed that energy from another person, and that person was even stronger. There must be a connection. Scarlet was almost immediately convinced of her conjecture. She stopped on the spot, raised her hand to indicate that she meant no harm. Then, she hastily asked, "Do you know Han Hao?" "Han Hao? Who's Han Hao? I don't know him. Who are you? Who's Han Hao?" Statholm and the other members of the Han family were astounded. They looked at Scarlet in puzzlement, and wondered if there was something wrong with this woman. Why would she rush over to ask such an unreliable question? Scarlet was stunned when she heard that the members of the Han family did not know Han Hao. She thought, am I being overly suspicious? But that old man's energy is very similar to that of Han Hao. How can I explain that? We don't know the person you are talking about. Please don't stand in our way, said Statholm with a faint smile. Although he spoke politely, he was repeatedly signaling to Ballins with his eyes that if you don't leave now, don't blame us for being rude. Then I'm sorry. I'll be on my way. Having been a god hunter for so many years, Scarlet was very good at reading people's expressions. She immediately understood the situation. She thought, since this has nothing to do with Han Hao, I don't have to worry about your lives. Wait. It was at this moment that Gilbert seemed to recall something. He rubbed his head and said, I think I've heard this name before. Let me think. The members of the Han family looked at Gilbert in puzzlement. Ballins did not attack Scarlet immediately. Scarlet looked at Gilbert suspiciously and tried to remind him. Han Hao cultivates in the energy of death. He carries a 3-meter-long bone spear in his hand and there are 7 spears on his back. Gilbert's eyes lit up as he finally remembered. He cried out in surprise. It's him! Not only Gilbert, but Emily, Phoebe, and Fanny had also seen Little Skull Han Hao. Although they did not know that Han Hao had given himself a name, they knew who she was talking about when Scarlet mentioned that Han Hao had 7 bone spears on his back. I think we know who you are talking about. Emily looked at Scarlet with a puzzled expression. She smilingly asked, Is there anything I can help you with? Is Han Hao a member of the Han family? Asked Scarlet. Emily thought for a moment, and found it hard to define. However, she knew that Han Shu and Little Skull were very close. It seemed that Han Hao was a member of the Han family. After thinking for a moment, Emily smilingly said, You can say that. That's great, Scarlet hastily said. The god hunters of the Ronson Canyon have joined forces to attack the Han family. I don't think you will be able to handle so many of them. You'd better retreat from the Ronson Canyon at once. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. Upon hearing those words, Emily, Statholm, and the others' faces jolted. Statholm anxiously asked, How did you know? I am a god hunter leader myself. I came to warn you because I know Han Hao, replied Scarlet anxiously. I have already sent people to inform Han Hao's followers. But I don't know if they will make it in time. Their followers are all over the Ronson Canyon. As long as you are in the canyon, Tanai will not be able to escape their eyes and ears. They know this place too well. You must leave at once. We can't retreat. Phoebe put on a bitter smile. If they were to retreat now, they might run into Hoff's and Lerickson's followers. They were no better than the god hunters. Thank you for your warning. We can only leave the Ronson Canyon as fast as we can. Hopefully, we will be able to escape the god hunters' pursuit. They did not waste any more words. They did not even ask about the relationship between Scarlet and Han Hao. They hastily took off again. Chapter 885. The Ronson Canyon was more than 10 days away from the Death Dominion. They had no other choice but to leave the Ronson Canyon as fast as they could. Although Gilbert, Emily, and the others were puzzled as to why this malevolent-looking woman knew Little Skull Han Hao, they thought that as Han Shuo's summoned creature, Little Skull should have stayed in the Netherworld and should not have appeared on Elysium. As time was of the essence, they did not have the time to ask Scarlet about Little Skull Han Hao. In their minds, Han Hao was not a very important person. After all, a summoned creature was just a summoned creature. As they had never seen Han Hao in person, they could never understand how terrifying Han Hao was. Scarlet understood their anxiety and did not stop them. After seeing the airship of the Han family fly past her, Scarlet hesitated for a moment before she secretly followed behind the airship of the Han family. As one of the leaders of the Ronson Canyon God Hunters, Scarlet knew better than the Han family how powerful the God Hunter factions were in the Ronson Canyon. As long as the members of the Han family were in the Ronson Canyon, Tanai, Quincy, and the others would be able to track them in no time. Quincy and the others had been roaming the Ronson Canyon for many years and knew the geography of the canyon like the back of their hands. Since he had contacted so many factions to deal with the Han family, he would not allow the Han family to escape his grasp. Scarlet's speculation was proven to be correct. 3 days later, when the Han family's airship was about to fly above a mountain peak that pierced through the clouds, they discovered that the mountain peak was densely packed with burly men with sinister expressions and ferocious glints in their eyes. The crowd on the mountain peak kept a short distance from each other. It was obvious that they did not belong to a single faction, but a group of many different factions. The eyes of those leading the group were filled with greed as they stared fixedly at the approaching house of Han. Some of them were swallowing their saliva in an unnatural manner. The corners of their mouths curved into cruel smiles. It was obvious at a glance that they were god hunters who loved to kill. Before the Han family's airship could get close, the god hunters who had been waiting on the mountain peak for some time flew into the air. The leaders of the god hunters deployed their domains of divinity and formed layers of boundaries on the mountain peak to stop the airship. In front of the layers of barriers, the Han clan's flying bats were forced to stop. What the hell are you scums doing? Gilbert knew that they must be up to no good since they were blocking his way. As soon as he stepped forward, he yelled, "Get out of my way!" There were a dozen or so god hunter factions in the Ronson Canyon blocking the Han family's airship. Each faction had at least a few dozen god hunters. Quincy's faction had the largest number of god hunters, numbering more than 300. The dozen or so god hunter factions had gathered together, numbering around 1,300 in total. Most of their leaders possessed high god strength. With such a pack of jackals blocking their way, the future of the Han family was bleak. Quincy paid no heed to Gilbert's shouts. He stood together with the other god hunter leaders and lecherously laughed at Phoebe, Emily, and Fanny. From time to time, he would point at Jasper, Lisa, and the others and let out strange, complacent laughter. No matter if it was Phoebe, Emily, Jasper, or Lisa, they were all the kind of beauties that could only be found 1 in 100. Under the effects of Han Shuo's rebirth pills, their skin was fair and translucent, preserving the most beautiful moment of a woman. Anyone who saw them would be stunned by their beauty. God hunters lived on the edge of a knife and sought all kinds of thrills. It was only natural for them to have a strong desire for beautiful women. Beautiful women such as Phoebe and Emily were fatally attractive to them. For a moment, they almost forgot their main objective. From the perspective of Quincy and the other god hunters, the Han family's guards were nothing to be afraid of. Most importantly, they did not discover any high god experts among the Han family's troops. Even though the Han family's forces were large in number, they were nothing in their eyes. Hee, I want that woman. A woman as ripe as a honey peach is the most delicious. Ha, no one is allowed to snatch her from me. Kristen pointed at Emily, and put on a lascivious smile as though they could take everything from the Han family. That little beauty is mine. She's my type. Quincy pointed at the panic-stricken Lisa, put on a mischievous smile, and said, Brothers, take a good look. Let's divide the spoils of war. TSK, they are much better than that slut Scarlet. Not only are their figures top-notch, but they are also so good-looking that they can make anyone drool. Alright, let's divide the women first before talking about the other spoils of war. It seems that we will have a good time today, another god hunter leader said with a lascivious smile. He did not take the Han family seriously at all. Ever since the Han family arrived on Elysium, they had never suffered such humiliation. Sanguiner, Ballins, Gilbert, and the others were so enraged that their lungs were about to explode. Emily, Phoebe, and the other ladies who were singled out by the god hunter leaders wanted nothing more than to hack those god hunter leaders into 1,000 pieces. However, both Emily and Phoebe knew that they had no chance of winning against a dozen or so ferocious high gods and more than 1,000 god hunters. Gilbert, Sanguiner, and the others were about to charge out when they saw that their matriarch was being humiliated. However, they were stopped by Emily's anxious gaze. Phoebe put on an ashen face and said in a cold voice, We are members of the Han family of the City of Shadows. We are on good terms with the major family clans of the Death Dominion. If you dare to cause trouble for us, you will be surrounded and annihilated by the divine guards of the Darkness and Death Dominions. Everyone, if you are willing to let us pass, we can offer you 5 million black crystal coins. What do you think? Haha, who do you think you are trying to scare? Quincy raised his head and laughed. He said, Don't you know who we are? What kind of business do we do? Hee, we are god hunters and this is what we do. If we were afraid of the divine guards of the 2 dominions, we would have quit a long time ago. Let's not waste our breath on them. These women are making our hearts itch. How can we just watch them leave before our eyes? Said Kristen as he rubbed his hands impatiently. Wait. It was at this moment that Scarlet flew out from the back of the airship. She took a glance at Quincy and the others and hastily said, I have asked them. They know Han Hao. You better not act rashly. The god hunter leaders were stunned when they heard those words. Some of them who were very afraid of Han Hao started to hesitate. It seemed that they wanted to retreat. Even Quincy and Kristen's faces jolted. It seemed that even though Han Hao had left the Ronson Canyon, the two were still very wary of Han Shuo. Scarlet, don't be an alarmist, Quincy angrily rebuked and said. Who would believe their words? Humph, Han Hao has been in the Ronson Canyon for so many years and I have never seen him have any relatives or friends. Don't think that just because the family name is Han, they have anything to do with Han Hao. Who do you think you are trying to scare? I have asked them. They said that Han Hao is indeed a member of the Han family. Scarlet looked at Quincy with cold eyes and said in a sinister voice, Think about Han Hao's ruthlessness. Given Han Hao's personality, if he finds out who touched one of his people, no one will be able to escape his wrath. Han Hao has run amok in the Ronson Canyon for so many years and never once has he suffered a loss. Even those major family clans from the Death Dominion who killed Han Hao's subordinates did not manage to survive until now. The eyes of the leaders of the smaller factions flickered incessantly after hearing Scarlet's words. It seemed that Han Hao's influence in the Ronson Canyon was so great that they were starting to panic after hearing Scarlet's words. Cut the crap, you *TCH. Quincy had been suppressed by Han Hao's forces in the Ronson Canyon for a long time. Now that Han Hao had left the Ronson Canyon with his subordinates, Quincy was very annoyed by people mentioning Han Hao. Those people are trying to scare us with Han Hao's name. Don't fall for it. You all know that Han Hao doesn't have any relatives. Let's settle this as soon as possible. Think about it. The Han family has so many beauties and so much wealth. Today, they will all be ours. Quincy continued to persuade. Perhaps Quincy's explanation worked, or perhaps the God Hunters were bewitched by the beauties and wealth of the Han family. The God Hunter leaders encouraged themselves. They waved their hands and commanded their subordinates to surround the Han family airship from all directions. Scarlet knew that it was useless for her to say anything now that things had come to this stage. She sighed helplessly. She knew that she wouldn't be able to escape if she persisted. She had no choice but to retreat silently. At this moment, a battle was about to break out. Everyone, it's quite lively here. A shrill, cold laughter sounded from the distance. A burly man whose upper body was covered with scars walked towards them. He cultivated an edict of destruction and was only a late-stage mid-god. His strength was inferior to any of the God Hunter leaders. However, the arrival of such a person caused the God Hunter leaders to turn grave. Cisco, haven't you all left the Ronson Canyon? Said one of the God Hunter leaders with a big smile on his face. His previous domineering demeanor was nowhere to be seen as he spoke to Sita, whose strength was one level lower than his. Quincy and Krizen's expressions were very unnatural. They bunched their brows and looked at Cisco, who shouldn't be here. Quincy put on a gloomy face and asked, Cisco, you should be in the fringe with your leader. Why are you still in the Ronson Canyon? Cisco laughed maniacally and coldly replied, Since when did you have the right to interfere in our business? After taking a short pause, Cisco took a glance at the members of the Han family on the airship and said to the God Hunter leaders, Our leader has given us an order not to touch the Han family. He also forbade us from touching the Han family. I don't know why our leader would give us such a strange order, but since it is our leader's order, we must obey it. Cisco, you have already left the Ronson Canyon. Why are you still meddling in other people's business? Krizen's face turned cold and said, Besides, who do you think you can stop? What gives you the right to be so presumptuous here? Han Hao is not here. Do you think you can overturn the heavens? Cisco's eyes glinted with ferocity. He put on a hideous smile and said, We are all in this line of work. Do you think I don't know his temper? I've already informed my brothers of the situation before I came here. If I'm not mistaken, they should be rushing towards the fringe right now. You can kill me today. I'm prepared to die at any moment in this line of work. But I believe you all know my leader's temper. Do as you see fit? The God Hunter leaders' faces jolted upon hearing those words. They did not expect Cisco to have another trick up his sleeve. They knew that even if they killed Cisco and the members of the Han family, Han Hao would know about it. Since Han Hao has spoken, I will not participate. After a long moment of silence, one of the God Hunter leaders forced a smile and said to Cisco, When you see Han Hao, send him my regards. Tell him that I, Unlong, will never make an enemy out of him. Of course, replied Cisco with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I have to give face to Han Hao. Quincy, I'm sorry, but I will not participate, said another God Hunter leader who had given up. Han Hao treated me well back in the Ronson Canyon. I will not attack his people. One after another, the God Hunter leaders decided to retreat at the most crucial moment. They reluctantly suppressed the thought of attacking the house of Han and hastily left with their men after informing Shidan of the situation. In the blink of an eye, only Quincy and Crizin were left standing in front of the Han family's airship. They could only watch helplessly as the God Hunter leaders left. They cursed Han Hao countless times in their minds. On the airship, Gilbert, Emily, Fanny, and the others looked at one another in astonishment. They had no idea what was going on. When did that little skull come to the Ronson Canyon? Why are those fugitives so afraid of him? Ballins was the only one who suddenly realized something. He softly exclaimed, "So it's him!" "Who?" asked Sanguiner and Gilbert simultaneously. Ballins put on a surprised face and reminded, "Do you remember that mysterious youngster I mentioned to you? He is the most powerful God Hunter in the Ronson Canyon. To this day, not many know where he came from. I did not expect him to be one of us. It can't be wrong." Dark Dragon Gilbert put on a bitter smile and said, "That youngster has been very powerful for a long time. I did not expect him to be so influential in the Ronson Canyon. Quincy, Crizin, do you two really want to fight my leader?" Shitan looked at Quincy and Crizin and sneered. "Hee, I advise you to give up. I will pretend that this never happened. Or else, you know the consequences." "Damn it, I don't believe this." Quincy seemed to have been angered by Shitan's arrogance. He angrily shouted, "If Han Hao were here, perhaps I would give him face. You are just a goddamn mid-god and you dare to talk nonsense in front of me? Humph, if Han Hao goes to the fringe, who knows if he can come back alive. But even if he does, I'll just give up on the Ronson Canyon. Let's go and get rid of this Shitan first." Crizin had originally wanted to retreat, but when he saw the women on the Han family's airship, he was blinded by lust. He waved his hand and commanded, "Kill them!" Chapter 886. If it weren't for Chitin's presence, there would be far more God Hunter leaders than just Quincy and Crizin. If more than a dozen God Hunter factions were to gang up on the House of Han, the threat of more than a dozen High Gods would have put the House of Han in grave danger. However, with Little Skull and Han Hao's influence in the Ronson Canyon, those faction leaders had no choice but to withdraw from the Han family out of fear of Han Hao's strength. With that, they would only have to face Quincy and Crizin's factions. Quincy and Crizin's factions had around 500 people in total. Among them, Quincy and Crizin were mid-stage High Gods. They were one of the most powerful factions in the Ronson Canyon. However, the Han family was not afraid of these two factions. Just as the other faction leaders left, Gilbert, Sanguiner, and the others who had been holding back could no longer hold back. Just as Quincy and Crizin issued their orders, they suddenly discovered that the Han family's guards were charging at them. It was easy to tell if an expert was skilled or not. When the Han family's guards flew towards them from the airship, Quincy and Crizin's faces slightly changed. They were startled and they anxiously shouted, "Motherfucker, be careful!" The Han family's guards were arranged in neat and orderly formations. Each group of guards maintained an appropriate distance from each other so as to not affect the efficiency of their attacks. The ice-cold eyes of the Han family's guards told Quincy and Crizin that the Han family's guards were definitely seasoned veterans. They were not rookies who had never experienced the cruelty of battle. Therefore, Quincy and Crizin immediately noticed that the Han family's guards were extraordinary. They immediately ordered their subordinates to attack with all they had. However, Quincy and Crizin had underestimated the strength of the Han family's guards. The Han family's guards had not wasted their years of training in the 8 Desolation and Torment formation. Baptized in blood and fire, the Han family's guards were even more ferocious and cold-blooded than the God Hunters. When they attacked, they were like sharp blades that could cut through anything. They stabbed right into the center of the God Hunters. The same scene as the battle between Ralph's Second Corps Divine Guards played out once again. The Han family guards had the upper hand in terms of numbers and teamwork. As soon as they came into contact with the Han family guards, their terrifying battle prowess was on full display. The god hunters who had been wreaking havoc in the Ronson Canyon were forced to retreat again and again. The Han family guards slaughtered their way through the god hunters like a hot knife through butter. There was not a single place that could withstand the god hunters' attacks. Wherever they passed, the god hunters would scream in despair and agony. One after another, mangled corpses were sent flying and fell from the sky to the peak below. Scarlet and Chiton were dumbfounded. When they saw Quincy and Crizin giving the order to attack, they thought that they were done for. Chiton was blaming herself for being too bossy and domineering just now. But before she could ponder any further, she was astonished to discover that the ones who attacked first weren't Quincy and Crisin's godhunters, but those Han family guards that she knew nothing about. It was only after the battle started that Chiton realized what was going on. She finally understood why Han Hao had ordered her not to attack the Han family guards. Most people wouldn't be able to see through the intricate and profound battle formation of the Han family guards. But as a direct subordinate of Little Skull, Han Hao, Chiton had seen Han Hao's demonic battle formation. With just one glance, she understood that the battle formation used by the Han family guards was similar to the one she was familiar with. When one of Scarlet's subordinates passed the information to Chiton didn't quite believe that Han Hao had anything to do with the Han family. But after seeing the battle formation of the Han family guards, she was the first to believe in Scarlet's judgment. Compared to Chiton, the combat strength of the House of Han had a greater impact on Scarlet. She watched in astonishment as the House of Han pierced into Quincy and Crisin's hands as though they were nothing more than divine weapons. She watched in astonishment as the House of Han pierced into Quincy and Crisin's hands and slaughtered the god hunters. Han family. Han Hao. They are indeed mysterious characters. Scarlet mumbled to herself in astonishment. Quincy and Crisin felt as though they were going crazy. Never in their wildest dreams did they expect that the Han family guards would be so terrifying. Each and every one of the guards was using a profound battle formation to harvest the lives of Quincy and Crisin's subordinates. Quincy and Crisin wanted to lend a hand, but they were firmly entangled by Sanguiner, Balance, and Gilbert. By now, Quincy and Crisin were completely convinced that the Han family had a complicated relationship with Han Hao. This was because Han Hao's subordinates knew a thing or two about the battle formation of the Han family guards. Furthermore, the battle formation used by Sanguiner, Balance, and Gilbert faintly resembled that of Han Hao. Before the battle began, Quincy and Crisin did not see any high god in the Han family guards. But as soon as the battle began, the sudden appearance of Sanguiner, Balance, and Gilbert gave them a huge surprise. They suddenly discovered that those unknown and insignificant characters had suddenly transformed into ferocious monsters. Quincy and Crisin were filled with regret. They cursed themselves for provoking the members of the Han family when they knew that Han Hao was unfathomable and mysterious. "You're still yelling? Why aren't you yelling? Motherfucker! Didn't you say a lot of bullshit just now? You old dog, I'm going to skin you alive today! You motherfucker! How dare you have any improper thoughts about our mistress? I'm going to break your D*ck right now!" Unlike the silent Sanguiner and Balance, Gilbert never closed his mouth when he attacked Crisin together with Balance. His venomous words were constantly spewing out of his mouth. They were not any weaker than his ferocious attacks. Quincy was held back by Sanguiner while Crisin was held back by Gilbert and Balance. Balance did not utter a single word. Instead, he launched a flying sword that was filled with murderous intent, forcing Crisin to focus most of his energy on defending against Balance's attacks. Gilbert circled around Crisin like a ghost, attacking him at the most opportune moments, and cursing all of Crisin's ancestors with his filthy mouth. Sometimes, the mental torment was no less painful than the physical pain. Crisin felt as though he would collapse at any moment under Gilbert's annoying curses, sarcasm. Unable to focus, Crisin's attacks were greatly reduced. Balance took advantage of the situation and inflicted a few more wounds on Crisin's body with his flying sword. "Kill them!" Phoebe shouted coldly when she saw that Han Hao's side had gained the upper hand. Phoebe hated Quincy and Crizin very much because the two of them looked at her with obscene expressions and insulted Emily, Lisa, and the other girls. Phoebe could not bear it any longer. Just a moment ago, Phoebe had been suppressing her anger because she was weaker than the other two. But now that the Hahn family guards had gained the upper hand, Phoebe could no longer hold back her anger. Be it Phoebe, Emily, Statholm, or Ermike, these talented individuals from Profound Continent had made rapid progress in their cultivation on Elysium, a place rich in elemental energies. In the Hahn family, they were supported by ample wealth. Scrolls of profound energy, pellets personally refined by Han Shuo, and divine essences of various elements purchased from various regions. These items kept appearing in the Han family's important storehouse and were distributed by Phoebe, Emily, and the others to the core members of the Han family. These members of the Han family, who were all heroes of Profound Continent, had access to everything that could help them in their cultivation on Elysium. In addition to their outstanding talents, although their progress was not as fast as that of Sanguiner, Balans, and the others, they had made rapid progress. By now, most of Phoebe, Emily, and the others had broken through to the Midgod realm. Talented individuals such as Statholm and Ermike had entered the late-stage Midgod realm. Their progress was much faster than those gods who were born and bred on Elysium. These people were able to become top-notch experts on Profound Continent, a place where elemental energies were scarce and they barely understood the various elements. After coming to Elysium, they had access to all the convenient resources available to them. It was only natural that they would make rapid progress in their cultivation. Phoebe, Emily, Stratholm the old monster, Ermike, and the others weren't idling around. They were familiar with Han Shuo's demonic formations. They arranged themselves into formations with astonishing destructive power and attacked the god hunters under Quincy and Crisin's command, constantly inflicting damage to them. The situation was completely one-sided. The first one to suffer was Crisin. He finally lost his mind after hearing Gilbert's malicious curses. He was so focused on attacking Gilbert that he forgot himself. Crisin, who had lost his mind, had forgotten about Balans. When his attack finally landed on Gilbert, Balans' flying sword pierced through his nape and protruded from his forehead. Crisin died on the spot. Idiot! I may not have outstanding offensive power like Sanguiner and Balans, but my body is tough. Do you really think you can kill me with one strike? Idiot! Gilbert staggered and coughed a few times before he regained his composure. He stepped forward and kicked Crisin's dead body, sending him crashing to the mountain peak below. Gilbert's new body was meticulously forged by Han Shuo using the method of refining demonic weapons. Although his body's defensive power was not as freakishly strong as Han Shuo's, it was at least a dozen times tougher than an ordinary god's. Had it been anyone else, even Balans, they would have been severely injured if not killed by Crisin's attack. However, Gilbert was fine. All right, Gilbert, hurry up and join forces with Sanguiner to kill the other one, said Balans as he wiped the flying sword in his hand before he turned around and charged at Quincy. Gilbert spat on the ground and spat on Crisin's corpse. Damn it, you're lucky! After cursing again, Gilbert turned around and charged at Quincy. He planned to join forces with Balans and Sanguiner to kill Quincy as soon as possible. Under Sandwith's relentless attacks, Quincy was at his wits' end. He was heavily encircled by the House of Han guards. Whenever he tried to break free from the encirclement, he would discover that the House of Han guards would frantically attack him. Although Quincy possessed formidable strength, the full-powered attacks of 100 Midgods were not to be underestimated. Not to mention, there was also Sanguiner, a reckless and ruthless character. There was no way he could escape from this place. The moment Crisin died, Quincy's heart turned cold. He knew that he was done for. As expected, Balans and Gilbert did not have the resolve to fight fair and square. They immediately surrounded Quincy, causing him to feel even more despair. Even if I'm going to die, I'm going to drag someone down with me, said Quincy hatefully in his heart. As a god hunter, he did not know if he would live to see the light of day. Every god hunter's hands were stained with blood. As the leader of the god hunters, Quincy dared to offend Little Skull, Han Hao, and even attack the Han family. It was clear that he was not someone who feared death. The moment Balans and Gilbert surrounded him, Quincy knew that he would not be able to escape death. Ruthless people had their own plans. He was prepared to perish together with his enemies. Everyone spread out. This guy wants to drag someone down with him. All right, keep some distance from him. We will slowly wear him down. Stratholme the old monster glanced at Quincy and saw through his bloodthirsty eyes. Having roamed the profound continent for so many years, Stratholme the old monster's eyes were very sharp. With his reminder, not only Balans and Gilbert, but even Sanguiner, who was entangled with Quincy, immediately retreated a distance away. Mother Fasterus Cur, you want to perish together? Hee, that won't happen. Gilbert arrived again. His mouth once again began to play its venomous role. A series of curses and insults were spewed out from his mouth. Sanguiner, Balans, and some of the Han family guards in the distance were bombarding Quincy with all sorts of attacks. Quincy was on the verge of vomiting blood. He discovered that he had been deprived of the opportunity to perish together with his enemies. He could only helplessly face all sorts of attacks in despair. In the end, Quincy failed to escape his fate of being surrounded and killed. The attacks led by Sanguiner, Balans, and Gilbert drained Quincy's strength bit by bit. Eventually, Quincy ran out of divine energy and was beaten to death with a sky full of divine weapons. Quincy's death was extremely depressing. His body was pierced by all sorts of bizarre divine weapons and hung in midair. It was only when Sanguiner was certain that Quincy had run out of blood that the party swarmed forward and added a few more divine weapons. They dismembered Quincy and threw his body parts all over the place. After Quincy and Krizen's deaths, the god hunters who were fortunate enough to have escaped from the house of Han fled like headless chickens. They fled into the mountains and forests, disregarding everything else as they tried to get out of this perilous place. Chiton and Scarlet, who were watching from a distance, were astonished to see Krizen and Quincy killed one after another. They had no idea how they should deal with the Han family. Chapter 887. Quincy and Krizen, two of the strongest god hunter factions in Ronson Canyon, had been utterly annihilated in today's battle. The deaths of the two meant that it would be difficult for the two factions to reunite. The god hunter leaders who had left earlier would definitely take this opportunity to recruit the remaining god hunters into their ranks. After today's battle, Tanai's god hunters in Ronson Canyon would no longer dare to make an enemy of the Han family. Corpses were strewn all over the mountain peak. The Han family guards boarded their airships with cold and emotionless expressions. They silently waited for orders from Phoebe, Stratholme, and the others. It was only at this moment that Phoebe and Emily turned their attention to Chiton and Scarlet. Emily smilingly walked towards them and thanked them. "Thank you so much. If it wasn't for your kind reminder and help, we would have died here today. You're too kind. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do," replied Scarlet hastily. She did not dare to put on airs. "Chief had instructed us before he left. This is what we are supposed to do." After witnessing the Han family's formation, Chiton realized that Han Hao must have a close relationship with the Han family. Chiton's attitude towards Quincy and the others changed to one of humility. "Has Han Hao really become your chief?" Emily bunched her brows and asked Chiton, who was rather reserved. Chiton was rather stunned. He did not understand why Emily would ask such a question. After staring blankly for a moment, Chiton honestly answered, "Yes. Ever since Chief came to Ronson Canyon decades ago, he has been leading us on expeditions in this region. After a few decades, Chief has become the most powerful faction in Ronson Canyon. Those guys that we encountered today were all defeated by Chief. If Chief were here, not even Quincy and Krizen would dare to attack us." Emily wore an astonished face. She did not expect that the strange little skull could have evolved to such an extent. A person who could dominate so many god hunter factions in Ronson Canyon was no ordinary person. Emily knew that. Unbelievable! It's really him! Lisa sighed. Back in the Babylon Academy of Magic and Force, the little skull Han-Hao had sneakily attacked her at night. Lisa had a deeper impression of this strange undead creature with 7-boned spurs than anyone else. There's nothing strange about it. That guy has been very powerful since a long time ago. It's just that you guys don't know about it. Dark Dragon Gilbert had a smug look on his face as he chuckled. You guys don't spend much time with Master, so you definitely don't know how treacherous that fellow is. Back in the Dark Forest, he was already sneaking up on others with Master every day. Gilbert had been with Han-Sho for a long time. As he had signed a completely unfair contract with Han-Sho, Han-Sho did not hide anything from him. Therefore, Gilbert knew more than Emily and Fanny about the strength and intelligence of the little skull Han-Hao. Then, where is he now? Asked Phoebe. She did not know much about the relationship between the little skull Han-Hao and Han-Sho. Chief is in the fringe, replied Kaiten immediately. He did not suspect the Han family at all. If that fellow is in the fringe, then Master must be in the fringe as well, said Gilbert smilingly. Let's leave the Ronson Canyon first. We'll talk after we get out of here, interjected Statholm. Statholm the old monster suddenly interjected. He was worried about Hoff's and Lerickson's return. As they were not out of danger yet, he had to ensure the safety of the Han family. After hearing Statholm's reminder, Phoebe and Emily immediately realized that it was not the time to ask questions. The two ladies nodded and Phoebe said, "Thank you for your help. The Han family will remember this favor. However, we have some urgent matters to attend to and cannot stay in the Ronson Canyon any longer. Let us meet again in the future. Then I shall not disturb you any further," replied Scarlet with a faint smile. She nodded at Kaiten and excused herself. Kaiten did not say much. As a god hunter, he could not get too involved with the Han family as it would only bring unnecessary trouble to the Han family. Besides, with Quincy and Crizzen dead, Kaiten had to deal with the aftermath of their deaths. Therefore, Kaiten merely reminded Scarlet to be careful and left with her. With the deterrence of this battle and the reputation of Little Skull Han-Hao in the Ronson Canyon, the Han family's airship did not encounter any more obstacles in Tanai's journey through the Ronson Canyon. 10 days later, the airship finally crossed the Ronson Canyon and entered the territory of the Death Dominion. Not long after the Han family's airship entered the Death Dominion, the pursuers led by Lerickson and Hoffs finally caught up to the Han family's airship. However, this time, Lerickson and Hoffs did not get what they wanted. Several large family clans in the Death Dominion had sent divine guards to escort the Han family. On the day when Lerickson and Hoffs finally caught up to the Han family, the divine guards from the Death Dominion had already met up with the Han family. Lerickson and Hoffs were so angry that they could vomit blood, but there was nothing they could do. Although the dominions of darkness, death, and destruction had always been on good terms, they still had to abide by certain rules. This was the Death Dominion. Even though Hoffs was the city lord of Hush Vale City and Lerickson was the city lord of the city of Gorging Clouds, they dared not disobey the rules set by the overgods of the three dominions. They could only watch helplessly as the Death Dominion's divine guards escorted the Han family away. After arriving at the Death Dominion, the Han family finally escaped from the City of Shadows. Unfortunately, as the three did not know much about Han-Sho, they did not manage to come up with anything useful. They only came to a temporary agreement regarding the Han family. They agreed that once the Han family and Han-Sho returned to the Darkness Dominion, the three parties would join forces to kill Han-Sho. After the discussion was over, Lerickson and Hoffs left Fort Lossberg. Wallace, on the other hand, was in no hurry to leave. After hearing about the conflict between Hoffs and Lerickson and the Han family, Wallace became very interested in the strange demonic formations the Han family used. Wallace stayed in Fort Lossberg for more than a month. He wanted to find out how these seemingly ordinary stone pillars and trees could perform such miraculous functions. Unfortunately, he knew nothing about demonic arts and his month of exploration was fruitless. In the end, Wallace had no choice but to give up on his exploration. He sent his men to destroy all traces of the demonic formations the Han family left behind. Even Fort Lossberg was reclaimed by Wallace. It no longer belonged to the Han family. To the public, Wallace blamed Hushvale City for everything that happened to the Han family. He strongly criticized the actions of Hushvale City and made it clear that he would pursue the matter to the end. However, Hushvale City did not take any action against the Han family. Those in the City of Shadows who were aware of the matter criticized Wallace and the House of Saint for their actions. They made it clear that Wallace had driven the Han family out of the City of Shadows and caused the overall strength of the City of Shadows to plummet. After Aobashi and Erebus returned to the City of Shadows and learned about the situation with the Han family, they were rather disheartened. The two knew their own limits and did not voice their opinions on the matter. They only passively responded to the order to hunt down the Han family and oppress the Han family. However, when Andre and Carmelita learned of Wallace's actions, their reactions were no longer as mild as Aobashi and Erebus. The two of them were related to Wallace by blood and therefore did not need to be so careful with their words. They quarreled with Wallace for several days straight in the Saint residence. Naturally, Wallace would not reveal that he had played a dishonorable role in the matter. He placed all the blame on Hofs and Larrickson, claiming that he had no knowledge of the matter. Andre and Carmelita, of course, were not people who could be easily fooled. As high-ranking members of the House of Saint, they could tell from certain signs that Wallace had played a role in the matter. They had quarreled with Wallace many times. But no matter how big an incident was, people would gradually forget about it as time went by. After a while, the City of Shadows gradually calmed down. Other than the disappearance of the Han family's celestial pro-pharmacy, everything seemed to have returned to normal. But Wallace knew very well that the estrangement between him, Aobashi, Erebus, Andre, and Carmelita due to Han Shu and the Han family was not something that could be erased with the passage of time. ***** in the amphilas at the center of the fringe. Han Shu had no idea what was happening in the City of Shadows tens of thousands of miles away. He was still concentrating on dealing with the difficult problems set by Tyre, Log, and Wasis. Tyre, Log, and Wasis had made it clear that they did not mind Han Shu becoming another person with real power in the amphilas. However, they also said that they needed to consider the opinions of the hundreds and thousands of shop owners in Tanai. As long as the majority of the shop owners were willing to allow Han Shu to enter the amphilas, they would immediately hand over the monarch shops that belonged to Salas to Han Shu. How could Han Shu not know what the three sovereigns were planning? The three sovereigns were so famous in the fringe that not many shop owners dared to offend them. With the three sovereigns' instigation, most of the shop owners submitted to them and expressed that they were not willing to allow Han Shu to enter the amphilas. Han Shu had his men tally the number of shop owners who were willing to allow him to enter the amphilas. He discovered that the number of shop owners who were willing to allow him to enter the amphilas was only about 20% of the total number of shop owners. Furthermore, this was under Asora's instructions. 2 out of 10 was far from the standards set by Tyre, Log, and Log. There was only so much that Asora could do for Han Shu. Han Shu would have to figure out a way himself. It was at this point that Han Shu realized that Tyre, Log, and Wasis had not spent so many years in the fringe for nothing. Under their influence, most of the shop owners believed that Tyre, Log, and Log were more terrifying than Han Shu. Therefore, none of them dared to disobey the three sovereigns and secretly oppose Han Shu. Han Shu pondered for a few days in Tanai. Then, he went out alone and left a message on a cliff outside the amphilas. A day later, a stern-looking man arrived at the cliff, took the message left by Han Shu, and left without a sound. 7 days later, in an enormous cave thousands of miles away from the amphilas, the little skull, Han Hao, received the message from the man. After reading the message, Han Hao remained silent for a moment. Then, he glanced at his subordinates and calmly instructed, "Gather all company captains. I have orders." Yes, Chief. The subordinate respectfully retreated and, following Han Hao's orders, brought the company captains in charge of each area to Han Hao. A few days later, the company captains from each area gathered in the cave. Han Hao took out a scroll, pressed it on a cliff, and ordered, "Here is a list of names. Intercept all the shop's goods before they enter the Amphilas. But remember, don't start a massacre. Just kill 1 or 2 people to intimidate the Amphilas." Polo put on a surprised face and asked, "Just looting? Why can't we start a massacre?" Han Hao shot a glance at Polo and said in an indifferent voice, "It will be difficult to clean up the mess if everyone dies." Without further explanation, Han Hao waved his hand impatiently and ordered, "Carry out the order." Polo did not ask any more questions. He nodded and was the first to leave with his men. The company captains in charge of each area recorded the names on the scroll and left in silence. Over the next few days, god hunters from all over the fringe suddenly gathered near the Amphilas and surrounded it. After all, the Amphilas was just a valley. Most of the goods and materials sold in the Amphilas had to be imported from the outside world. Even poisons required sufficient medicinal ingredients and magical beast venom to be produced. Therefore, there were always quite a number of shops in the Amphilas. Although it was chaotic outside the Amphilas, those shops had their own ways of doing business. Every time they entered the Amphilas, they would spend a large amount of money to hire a large number of guards or pray for the protection of the sovereign's subordinates to prevent themselves from being captured by the fiends. Although it wasn't entirely safe for those shops to leave the Amphilas, and they would often get robbed, it wasn't too frequent. That was because those fiends in the Amphilas also needed the Amphilas to have enough goods for them to purchase. They knew that if they went too far, the Amphilas would be left empty-handed, and they were afraid that the sovereigns would investigate. But this time, things were a little different. Over the past month or so, the goods and materials of the shops in the Amphilas had been plundered by unknown forces one after another. During this period of time, none of the goods and materials of the shops in Tanai could enter the Amphilas. The robbers were very unyielding. No matter how many guards they had or whether they were under the protection of the experts of the 3 sovereigns or not, they would not hesitate to rob them. As long as one didn't resist, the robbers would be considered friendly and wouldn't resort to harsh measures. But if one tried to solve the problem by force, one would find that the robbers would bare their fangs and show no mercy. Moreover, there were many people lurking in the dark, waiting to kill them. After the caravans of the 2 groups of shops were slaughtered, the caravans of the other shops learned their lesson. They could only admit that they were unlucky to run into these fiends and obediently handed over all the goods and materials they had. Initially, they thought that the unknown force was just too poor and wouldn't continue robbing the Amphilas for too long. After all, the Amphilas was a disaster for the fringe. But they soon found out that they were wrong. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. The unknown force was still blocking the entrance to the Amphilas. They continued to attack the caravans and destroy the order of the fringe. However, after a period of observation, they gradually discovered a strange phenomenon. The caravans that supported Han Shuo's decision to enter the Amphilas had all survived the disaster. Not a single one of them was harmed. Chapter 888. The merchants of the Amphilas weren't fools. Although they didn't know where that force came from, they could guess that it had something to do with Han Shuo. The situation was very clear. The owners of these shops had been waiting for a long time for the supplies to enter the Amphilas, but the other 3 sovereigns did not take any action. They had no choice but to gather together and contact the 3 sovereigns. Tyre, Log, and Wasis were well aware that the Little Skull, Han Hao had been plundering the Amphilas like a madman. Their forces were spread across every region of the fringe, and they were the first to receive news of Han Hao's massive actions. However, the 3 sovereigns knew about the relationship between Han Hao and Han Hao. They had no intention of shedding all pretense of cordiality with Han Shu and chose to remain silent. They wanted to see how long Han Hao would continue his rampage. But when they discovered that Han Hao showed no signs of stopping even after several months, and that their presence had seriously affected the Omphalos, the three sovereigns could no longer sit still. When the merchants of the Omphalos reached the ears of the three sovereigns, they had no choice but to take action. First, they reassured the merchants and promised that they would handle the matter. Celestial Pearl Pharmacy. Han Shu was sitting in a secluded gymnasium, meditating on his new realm. He felt as though he had become one with the Omphalos. He felt a wonderful sense of peace and tranquility. Ever since entering the Skybreak realm, Han Shu would meditate and comprehend the mysteries of the new realm whenever he had the time. Back when he first entered the Skybreak realm, he had obtained many wondrous and chaotic mysteries. Those mysteries included the essence of demonic arts and the usage of various demonic techniques. He needed to carefully comprehend the mysteries in order to maximize his strength. The further one progressed in demonic arts, the more difficult it would be to achieve a breakthrough. Demonic yuan required a long period of accumulation and condensation. Those with poor aptitude might never be able to achieve a breakthrough. Even geniuses with exceptional aptitude and luck would need hundreds to thousands of years to achieve a breakthrough. It wasn't easy for him to enter the Skybreak realm, and he didn't know how long it would take him to reach the next level. Right now, all he could do was try his best to stabilize his new realm and familiarize himself with the powers and techniques of the Skybreak realm. This wasn't something that could be accomplished overnight. Han Shu's principle of doing things had always been to seize all the time he had to improve himself. He had already given his orders, and now it was time to wait for the results. One day, Han Shu, who was meditating on the Skybreak realm, suddenly sensed an extremely powerful life magnetic field slowly approaching the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy. After reaching the Heavenly Annihilation realm, only existences that were much stronger than him would be able to escape Han Shu's terrifying senses. After a brief probe, Han Shu learned that it was the other sovereign, Asura. Back in the Omphalos, as Han Shu's strength had yet to reach the Skybreak realm, he couldn't clearly sense Asura's hidden energy. But now that Han Shu had reached the Skybreak realm, he could immediately sense Asura's presence. Han Shu opened his eyes and walked out of the remote gymnasium unhurriedly. He went to the tallest clock tower in the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy and waited for Asura's arrival. After a while, Asura, who had also sensed Han Shu's aura, came to Han Shu with a smile on his face. "Tyre, Log, and Wasis want to see you." "Haha, it seems that they want to discuss the matters outside the Omphalos with you." Asura went straight to the point. It was obvious that he knew that the little skull Han Hao's actions outside the Omphalos were incited by Han Shu. Han Shu nodded and said, "I know why you are here. Hee, those three are pretty patient. They actually waited until today to come to me. Brian, be careful. I'm worried that Tyre, Log, and Wazer might join hands to deal with you if you push them too far." Asura bunched his brows and said in a worried tone, "Tyre, Log, and Wasis are all unreasonable people. If the three of them join hands to deal with you, you will be in grave danger." "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing," replied Han Shu smilingly. He did not take Asura's warning to heart. Han Shu could easily escape from Salus even before his demonic arts reached the Skybreak realm. Now that his strength had reached the Skybreak realm, it would be even more difficult for those sovereigns to capture him. Han Shu wasn't worried at all. "All right then, let me lead the way," said Asura. He did not say much and led the way. Tyre, Log, and Wasis, of course, did not choose the Omphalos. As the commercial center of the fringe, the Omphalos was strictly prohibited from fighting. As the ones who set the rules, the three sovereigns naturally could not do something that would slap their own faces. Therefore, they chose to meet Han Shu on top of an extinct volcano in the northwest of the Omphalos. The reason why Asura warned Han Shu to be careful of the three sovereigns was because of the location they chose. If Tyre, Log, and Wasis were planning to negotiate with Han Shu, they would definitely choose the Omphalos. The fact that they chose to meet on top of an extinct volcano meant that they had other plans in mind. Naturally, Han Shuo was not afraid of the three sovereigns. He followed behind Asura and chatted about recent events. Soon, they arrived at the extinct volcano. The volcano was dark red in color. There were no plants or beasts on the mountain. Before they even arrived at the volcano, Han Shuo sensed the biomagnetic fields of Tyre, Log, and Wasis. The three sovereigns did not deliberately conceal their energies. Han Shuo detected their locations with his consciousness. After carefully sensing, Han Shuo was shocked. He sensed a biomagnetic field that was much stronger than that of Log and Wasis. It was obvious that Tyre's reputation as the strongest sovereign in the fringe was well-deserved. His strength was indeed stronger than Log and Wasis. Haha, welcome, welcome! I finally get to meet the young prodigy who defeated Salus. On top of the extinct volcano, a burly man laughed at the sky. His voice was loud and clear. It was very pleasing to the ears. Tyre was not as sinister and vicious as Han Shuo had imagined. At first glance, he looked straightforward and forthright. This was somewhat unexpected to Han Shuo. Log and Wasis were not as generous as Tyre. Log nodded at Han Shuo with a fake smile, while Wasis wore a cold expression. He did not even greet Han Shuo. As soon as Han Shuo and Asura stood on top of the extinct volcano, Tyre laughed again and said, "The fringe has been deserted for so long that I'm starting to feel bored. Haha, it's good that you are here. Now there's some hope. That scoundrel Salus is blind. How dare he pick a fight with you? Serves him right." Tyre and Han Shuo did not treat each other as strangers. Those who did not know would have thought that the two were very close. You're welcome, you're welcome." While laughing, Han Shuo secretly observed Tyre. He discovered that although Tyre looked straightforward and not scheming, his eyes were bright and full of wisdom. Tyre was definitely not an easy character to deal with. After carefully observing Tyre, Han Shuo felt that this Tyre was much more difficult to deal with than Log and Wasis. This kind of person who looked straightforward but was actually meticulous was often more lethal than those who looked sinister and vicious. In his mind, Han Shuo had already regarded Tyre as the most formidable opponent in the fringe. While Han Shuo was sizing up Tyre, Tyre was also quietly observing Han Shuo. The more Tyre observed Han Shuo, the more puzzled he became. As Han Shuo cultivated in an energy system that was different from any energy system in this world, Tyre could not see through Han Shuo's strength. Han Shuo casually stood there, but his whole person seemed to have merged with the surrounding scenery. When Tyre closed his eyes, he even felt that Han Shuo wasn't there at all. It was as though Han Shuo was a stone that could be seen everywhere. There was nothing special about him. The more he could not see through Han Shuo, the more Tyre did not dare to act rashly. He began to doubt the countermeasures that he had discussed with Log and Wasis. He secretly winked at Log and Wasis, hinting them to use a softer approach. May I know why the three of you have asked me to come here?" Han Shuo observed the three of them for a while before asking about proper business. Log put on a faint smile and said to Han Shuo in a gentle manner, We know that the god hunters outside the Omphalos are related to you. Haha, that's why we have not interfered with them." Log forced a smile and said to Han Shuo in an awkward manner, "We know that the chaos outside the Omphalos is inevitable. But if this goes on, without Tanai's supply, those shops will not be able to sustain themselves. To everyone in the fringe, without the Omphalos, there will be no trading hub. Nobody wants to see that happen. So we thought." Han Shuo put on a faint smile and patiently listened to Log's explanation. After Log was done, he said in a similarly awkward manner, "You all have your own difficulties, but they also have theirs. With so many people, without sufficient resources to support them, it will be very difficult to maintain them. Unlike you guys, who can earn an endless supply of black crystal coins through the Omphalos. It's so easy." Wasis groaned coldly and said in a cold voice, Brian, the Fringe has its own rules. What you are doing is breaking the rules of the Fringe. Han Sho was stunned. He looked at Wasis with a surprised expression and said, The rules of the Fringe are set by the few of you. There were no rules in the past. Wasis, if you can set the rules, why can't I? Hee, do you think I'm not qualified? How long have you been in the Fringe? You want a piece of the pie so soon? Wasis sneered and said disdainfully, Don't think that you have surpassed Salus just because Salus's divine energy has weakened after the battle with Asura. Han Sho's face turned dark. He stared deeply at Wasis for a few seconds before he suddenly grinned and shouted, Wasis, do you dare to fight me one-on-one? You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.